Quaker.
Somebody likes it. Oh, it is?
It's actually not Quaker.
Is it not?
No.
It's not Dove and Platinum. It's not
No.
Nantucket. It's not Cobblestone.
I think it's Nantucket.
No,
no,
it's not
no,
dark
no,
enough.
no.
I think it's Quaker.
Linda is correct.
It's what?
It is Quaker gray.
Which is that sort of a soft,
Yes.
medium gray.
Nantucket gray is the one that's darker and
Nantucket
green.
gray is like that gray, if not darker.
It's darker
With
and
a little
green.
green in it.
Yeah.
So,
No, she's right.
Quaker.
Yeah, Quaker
Okay.
gray.
Somebody admired the colors of your building, and I said, I
Quaker
don't
gray
know
is-
what the colors
Quaker
are.
gray is sort of, it's non-confrontational.
It's
I gotta put
very,
it that way.
very neutral.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably
Not
the
dark,
one that
it's
comes
not light.
closest to weathered shingles.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Birthday's April 1st.
There, you put me on. No, I got a big cake for you.
Oh, look at the socks.
Come on.
I think this is it. This is it for today. We don't have these guys.
All right. Well, we'll have to have it next. Well, we're not having a meeting next Tuesday.
So I'll see you back to.
Okay, I'll be back at 2:15. That's right. She has an appointment at 2:30.
Now listen, what happens if we don't get to your application?
Yeah.
Well, I come back. Just ask, do we have to
What do
go
you
and
mean?
look at
Is it just a exam or?
something going on?
We're going to do the discussion first.
Yeah, because he needs to get out of here. Though there are some quorum issues here.
Is this your,
This is probably from,
That's from what I gave you guys a while ago. Here are all the exhibits right here, full copies of both files.
Mark said he's made corrections.
He's not touching the schedule.
Okay.
So what is
This
this
is the old
from?
one, and this is the revisions he said he made.
He can't touch it without asking.
Okay.
So what does that mean?
He said that was incorrect from the computer.
And what is the other one? Well, you want to know where those came from? Those came off of his wrong one.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do much of that column.
Okay.
I just sort of took the extra language out of the column.
Okay.
But, oh, how about that? I took those dates pretty much as his. All right, so this has to go back. They screwed it up. This has to go up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that doesn't really even need to be approved.
Okay, you don't need to bring that
I'll just
up.
leave it here.
Okay. That's fine. Okay.
Because Jason has it now, and he's taking the steps to put it back as well as the new entities.
Okay. Yep.
But you- for your purposes, you got the, you didn't do the second page. You've got the second page you put up for the deadlines for the subcommittees.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
color.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I have those. And everybody has one of these.
Yep.
Okay.
Does John have
you
one?
wanted to,
I gave one to him. John, you still have
John, where's your copy of this?
I got it here.
Okay.
do you want to start?
Yeah, but I gotta check, we gotta check quorums on, the 7, 8, and 9.
I would go to that appointment and come right back.
We just wanna figure it out.
Williams, Coombs, and Pohl
Wait a minute, which ones?
for Rose NT.
Which one, Williams?
Coombs and Pohl, Camp and Glazer aren't here, but if you three are here.
Okay, what about Nichols?
I don't care about that one.
Yeah, but who's on it?
We can put that one
I
on.
don't wanna put anything over that.
I don't have that one in front of me.
What about Surfside Hockey Club?
Surfside, Williams, Coombs, McLaughlin, Pohl, Camp.
Williams, Combs, John McLaughlin, Ray Cole. All right, so, and Ken, so you can leave, she can leave for that one. It's Rose is the problem. Can we check Carl Nielsen, what the quorum is on that one? That's 18 Nichols. Brooke?
Williams, Coombs, Pohl, Camp, Glazer.
All right, so it's Williams, Coombs, Cole, Camp, and Glazer. What about Alton Davis, 3 Delaney? Yeah, we left for a little bit. We knew he wasn't going up right now.
She would know.
Maybe. Most of them
That
don't
just
have the
happened
minutes.
Tuesday night, right?
I know.
I'm trying to bring them with
Paul
me.
and Oliver.
Who do you have?
Williams, Coombs, Paul and Oliver
Okay.
basically left for them.
Oh, yeah.
So for
Okay.
that one.
And
James.
Kim's we haven't opened yet.
Right.
What do we have for Graph?
Everybody at the board, at the table.
Okay, that's okay. What about Ryan?
That was a check for clarification on,
Oh, he came in, did he come, he came in and withdrew one of them, right, John? That's all that was.
Okay, Brian withdrew this, right?
Which one? He should have withdrawn the old one. Right. Hold on.
Motion I have to chair to go TC, ask about extensions.
Schools is here. I think everybody was on the school,
yeah,
Mm.
so we don't have a quorum problem there. Spindrift, we haven't heard anything from still, right? We tried and tried and tried.
Well, that's crossed off anyway.
Yeah, well, we crossed it off only today because we haven't heard from them.
This is
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. We haven't officially.
Well,
voted yet.
it's shown under consent, but was that
Because we
consent?
need them to clarify something. They need to fix the application, which they have not done. And he's tried multiple times to get a hold of them. And what's funny is that they have another application in with Mickey Rowland for the first,
Mm.
to do something to the house, and yet we cannot get anybody to respond, and Mickey didn't put this one in. They put it in themselves.
Is this Lindsay Inc., Lindsay the builder?
Yeah, Steve Lindsay.
He's right next door to me.
I know, he's
Call
just,
him.
they
No,
were not responding to anything
I'll-
he's done
I'll take care of
to
that.
get him.
Yeah.
Can we do one, what are we waiting for?
Well, we gotta resolve this Michael Ryan issue. And they're not answering. Okay, we're gonna open the meeting, it's a continuation of Tuesday night's meeting, which was August 18th. It's Thursday, August 20th, at 1:11. Of the Historic District Commission, are we all on, Terry?
Yes.
Do you want me to repeat that for the tape?
Nope.
Okay, and the TV's on?
Yep.
Have we got sound?
Yep.
We have an audio tape and we have a video tape. If anybody else would like to tape the meeting, they need to let me know now. I'm not seeing any. We'll keep going. We have an agenda. We pretty much scoped out that there's only two that have an issue, which are 8 and 9. So we'll just sort of play that by ear for a moment. Because if Diane leaves, we don't have quorums and we need to deal with them today. I don't think there's any other changes except that we took Spindrift off because they have not responded to multiple attempts. I'll leave that up to you to walk
Just
next
text
door.
it. Yeah.
So somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
aye.
Okay, Terry, for obvious purposes, there's only 5 of us here.
So makes it easy.
Yeah. Any public comment? Not seeing any. Kim, you don't have to sit here for the next half hour if you get something else to do. Same thing with you, Brooke, because we've got a conversation about 1 Lion Street going first, unless you just want to hang out, because it's air conditioned. All right, I would come back 2 o'clock, because if we get to you before then, we'll just get to the other ones first. Okay. Same thing with you, Brooke, except that I know you like the air conditioning. Yeah, okay.
I can text you.
Okay, we have a meeting with town council and attorney for the property owner of 1 Lion Street. If y'all wanna come on up and roll a chair up.
Sure.
Any interested parties can roll on up also.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Is this the right
Yeah.
spot? Okay.
Make sure you got a microphone going too. Okay. Just sort of
Does it
roll with
pick
the
up?
wind.
Okay,
We never know.
thanks.
So we have Diane Tillotson, attorney for the property owner, who is obviously 1 Lion Street LLC, but there is a real person behind this.
Yes, David Rogers is the owner behind the LLC. Correct.
And I've worked on a lot of his projects here.
Mark Poor is the architect.
We know, actually not an architect.
I'm sorry, and Scott O'Connor is the builder.
Mark is the designer, and Scott O'Connor of OCB.
Yes.
Is that what it is, OCB?
Yes,
But you're here, but you don't have anybody with you.
I
today.
do not. I've met with them both.
Unbelievable. Most of the rest of us have.
All right.
And we have attorney George Pucci from Town Council, who's representing us.
Did you want me to bring you up to date, or
Yeah, have you guys been able to talk before?
not really?
Not really.
Only, usually by correspondence,
I
which
can
I've seen.
update you as to where our last communication was.
Okay, point that thing, that
Sure.
microphone thing.
Yep. I can update you as to where our last communication was. Attorney Tillotson represents the property owner. She came into the matter after the property owner was served with your enforcement letter. And then I came in at some point as well after Attorney Tillotson sent a couple of letters. Then I started responding. You'll recall that I participated in your last publicly noticed meeting by conference call where I updated you as to where the status was. I informed you that the property owner had submitted correspondence, that they had a certain view of what the enforcement issues were, that they wanted to meet with you, and they wanted to try to resolve it. So I recommended that you know, continue the discussion to when counsel for the property owner could be present. So essentially, where you're at is you had an enforcement letter go out, then you received a response from the property owner. We had the communications that I just described to you. And since the property owner and counsel appeared to be willing to come in and try to work out what the issues were, whether that be by way of reaching a resolution or a remedy of it, or trying to convince you that, in fact, there wasn't a violation of the property in terms of what had been approved and what the work was that went forward. And, you know, these types of discussions on an issue like enforcement are always better to have in your public meetings when we're all here and you have a full quorum of the board, as opposed to a representative of the board dealing with it, then dealing with counsel, and then counsel for the property owner twice removed. So that's where we're at today.
Okay, thank you very much. I have given you this, I've emailed it to you before, I think you have a copy of this.
I do. Is that your?
That's the thing from
Your
way back
notes.
at the beginning, when I went through for several hours, both the HDC file and the building department file. So I've been over this, it's gone up to town council and come back again. You just can't copy this stuff again. And every piece of paper that was in the HDC file has been noted, and an explanation of it has been put on them. So there are some troubling things in here. I'll let you respond when we're done here. The HDC file, I think we started accumulating a file on probably April. There was a list of the timeline, I think, in the very back of your packets. April 2014, we started the HDC review process, and we finally approved it. I think it was a modification after that. On June 10th, 2014, we approved it for a partial demo and renovation of the original part of the house, which is the front of the house. 300 some odd square feet were supposed to be demolished, and that was the back L. That's all. July 7th, there's a letter from Mark Poor to Steve Butler discussing removal of the structure. That's in the building department file. August 7th, a decision was issued. August 12th, the building permit application was put in. September 9th, submission of the HDC approval with renovations and additional plans erroneously attached to the HDC plans, which they're not allowed to do, showing removal of the framing, et cetera, as if we had seen them. They were stapled together in the building department file to our COA approved plans, which contained none of it. They're not allowed to attach anything to the HDC approval, as if we saw it. That's the problem. There was 5 times more information attached to the COA than we ever saw, showing very little, if any, of the building remaining, the original building remaining. It was all new framing, all LVLs, all kinds of stuff. September 22nd, it was reviewed by Butler. October 22nd, additional material submitted to the building department file, not to us at any time. Nothing came to us after June 10th. November 18th, Butler approved the submission. December 2nd, the building permit was issued for a renovation. There was no demolition alluded to at all, but on the front of the building permit application, it said renovation and removal of the 310 square feet of the rear L. At no time, except for one letter that we can find in either file, was demolition of the original structure ever contemplated. It mentioned renovation of the original structure and demolition of that rear L, which was a later addition anyway, and we've allowed those to be removed on a general basis. We have a problem with our COA because our COA in the minutes expressly forbid it from being released by Mark Voigt until he gets a demo plan, which we've seen recently on 27 North Liberty. So we know what those look like, and those of us who've been on for a while used to require them all the time, and when David was on, we required them. We never got it. We never got the pictures. I did pull off pictures from the sale site on Link. And we have some old pictures of Link. So it was released by the HDC staff without the required condition having been met. We have letters from Core to Butler discussing previous discussions before we ever saw it about demolishing the building. We never heard that from Mark Poor at any time during the deliberations. In fact, we were very adamant about the original part of the building remaining intact. Obviously, new shingles, some new sheathing, things like that, but the actual structure remaining intact. No amended building permit was sought or issued to allow the demolition, either with us or with the building department. All paperwork in the COA, HCC, ZBA, and they appear to be in violation of the ZBA permit because it also mentions renovation and removal of the rear L, picking the building up, moving it further out of the setback, but no demolition. All say partial demo, 300 plus or minus square feet of the rear L, and renovation of main mass. No demo plan submitted to the building department file that we can find. All we found was all this new material attached to our COA showing the building being removed because you had all the framing plans. You had the CD construction plans. So the building permit appears to be in error. The paperwork doesn't match what was done. There appears to be a ZBA violation. Now, when you get to our stuff, certificate of appropriateness specifically says addition, partial demolition, shift building, which we allowed. They had to bring it up out of the dirt because it was sitting in the dirt. We allowed that. I don't know if it's actually in conformance with the height that we allowed them to go up because it appears to be higher, but the finished grade wasn't there at the time, so I don't know if that's going to fix that problem, but it is higher than what we allowed. But that may be done because we don't have all the grading done. The windows, there was some issue about the windows. We have to give up on the windows. What we didn't do, which we're doing now, is requiring a window-by-window survey, because all we have, we asked him for a window survey twice at least that I could find. No window survey was ever put in, because when you look at the pictures from the inside, it looks like they're original windows. At least the front facade, which is what we all thought that was really going to be made, was the windows in the front facade. Every time we asked for one, he kept saying, they're all new they're all newer windows, they're not original windows, and he kept saying they're all falling apart. Granted, not a lot of work had been done to this house for 40 years that she owned it. But no window survey continuously was put in, despite us bringing it up at least twice. So we took his word for it that these were not original windows and that they were all falling apart. And on the plan itself, it lists new Brasco windows, all 20, I guess 26 windows. So the window issue is probably off the table. But when I was standing at the site in the street talking to the builder.
Just clarification on that. When you said the window were all specified as Brasco, that was on the
actual
HCC
approved
plans.
set
Of plans.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll probably have to give up on that.
Okay.
But I was a little concerned when I was standing there in the street talking to the builder, who was also in the street, because it's basically zero setback. I said, where are the windows? because didn't realize that we'd allowed all of them to be removed. I thought we had allowed some and the rest to remain. And he said, oh, they're not here, they're all gone. And one of his workmen came out when he heard me ask the question and pointed over there behind the dumpster, and he shut him up. So after my conversation with him, I went around to Twin Street, I think is the one behind it, and right in the back of the dumpster were the original windows. So we aired, but we have to bite it, and the windows that went back in replicate the original windows that Brosco, True Divided Light, they appeared. Somebody thought they were vinyl and they were double glazed, but we've checked it, they're wood. So the window thing is coming off the table for the moment, because we did approve 26 new Brosco windows, or whatever that number is.
Because of
It
Mr.
relied
Fuller
on
saying
him
that
without
they-
getting the window survey, which we're not doing anymore vis-à-vis 27 North Liberty. We got right down to where it's going. So that's probably not an issue for us anymore. But there's an extension in there. But other things that are in irregularities on the COA are that when it gets down to historic information, which we require, every house on that street basically has a survey. They're all from the same time period. Lancaster dates the street from when the street was built. It dates most of the structures in there, including this one. What's missing from our file, which the public has access to, is that one survey. So I don't know where that one survey went, but all the other surveys are there. But it's referenced in Lancaster and several other, and Sanborn maps, things like that. So
Yeah,
it's,
I don't think there's anybody would dispute that.
no, and everybody knows that. But on the COA, he says unknown. And then on another piece of paper further back in our mess here, described the work done on a separate form, he lists the building is of historic value, that it was built back then, that Lancaster mentions it, et cetera, et cetera. So on this, yes, so on the COA, unknown, and we generally look at the COAs, and that's what we sign. It says none found. Well, there was plenty of things to find because he then references them later on. Where that survey went, I don't know. So then we go on, detail of work to be formed. There was no detail on the COA about removing and replacing and moving over the original chimney. Now, there's pictures of the original chimney in here, and it looks the same as all the other old ones I've seen in the attics of houses that aren't moved. He did not ask to remove the chimney on the COA and move it over and reconstruct it. On the plan, it's clearly indicated that the chimney's of a different dimension and it's moved over to the right and more centrally located. It was to the left off center somewhat in the bedrooms. And so we have chimney work done where it's referenced but not on the COA, which is what we signed. So that may be just a matter of just correcting it because the chimney has been removed and it's been moved over and there it is.
And it's been replaced, right?
Yes.
Yes, oh yeah, and it's moved over and it's a different dimension, because it was a pretty small chimney for a house that size. Again, it looks like it's 8 to 12 feet, 12 inches out of the grade, and that's not what we allowed. So that's the issue with the COA. I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible.
Madam Chairperson, point of order.
There is no point of order, but what is it, John?
I'm making a point of order. And our question is, since Mr. Vorse is our administrator, the only person working for us, why is he not here? He's mentioned in this, he should know all about this.
He does know all about it, but he's not involved with our deliberations, because he had nothing to do with this as it went by.
There were some accusations in here about him.
Who? Andrew? No.
No, not Andrew, I'm talking about
You said Vorse,
Mr.
John.
Vorse.
You want Voight or Vorse?
Voight,
You
V-O-I-T.
said Vorse 3 times.
VOIT.
Yes.
Semantics.
He's not involved at this point. That's administrative. I'm just telling you that he did not get the demo plan that we asked for, and it went out. End of story. End of story. So now we have Historic Structures Advisory Board form, which is, they said need the window survey. Remain 2/2 on the main mast. Clapboard 2 formal, we didn't allow that. The bay on the side, we reworked it. We need photos, old and new, we never got them. No date given, whereas later on there was a date given. East elevation gable is odd, not meet guidelines. I think we fixed that also. So that was those guys. Again, window survey, never got it. Supplemental HTC information. This is what's filled out by Mark Poor and submitted. Who was that? What was that?
It sounded like a voicemail thing. Goes on your phone.
I don't know how to operate that.
On the supplemental information here, which is number 4, unknown Lancaster, old houses, early 19th century. So he provides the information, guys. This structure has been abandoned. Well, it's only been abandoned since she died. And not maintained. Owner proposes to refurbish and construct addition. Demolish rear L in its entirety, install new materials on all remaining exterior features, which is shingles, some sheathing, things like that. Nowhere in here does it say demolish the front structure, the original structure. Elevate a new foundation with slight adjustment to siding on left to install front stoop, which we know about. Okay? Then he includes the Lancaster stuff. Then we have one image, that image. I have all those images. Okay? That came out of the NHA. And then we have the Sanborn map showing it. There have been varying degrees of changes to that rear L verified by the Sanborn maps, which is why we didn't really have a problem removing the rear L, because it was kind of a bizarre rear L in the first place. Supplemental information provided by Mark Poor. Some of it's duplication.
This stuff was just so everyone knows, I was not sitting on this application.
Right, I think you were away.
I was either away or it may have happened before I even got.
No, you were away.
Something. Anyway, I didn't sit on this application, but.
That's why
so-
we're going through this.
Well, but the supplemental information was provided to the board, or was that something that was put
No,
in?
provided
after?
to the file, into the HDC file, during the course of
During the
deliberations.
hearings.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think he's got this one dated, actually. He gave us a site plan. Faux chimney, which is not on the application. And you can see how the original chimney up here was a little off-center and smaller. There it is, still again not called out. But the front looks, except for putting back the formal surround on the front door, the front looks like it was always looked. And then you've got the additions going off the back. And this says, this is approved and stamped by us on June 10th, showing the circles of the new windows. We worked that bay window, I don't know how many times. That's a new addition, so there's obviously circled windows, because they had to change the configuration, because the original structure had no windows on the back, facing Twin Street. And we changed the configuration of those windows in the new addition. So that was more supplemental information. Nothing troubling in there, except for the chimney. Then we have crossed off. These are previous submissions, and what they do is they keep the miniature one and cross off, so you know that this came in before and we had revisions coming on there. Shift building, north and east, partial demolition, and the addition. That's it. So his original ones are almost a carbon copy of other ones, except for the things that we asked to be changed, like the bay window, the basement access, things like that, location of AC units, things like that. And again, it says 25 Brosco 9x12 glass double hung windows. So every time it's come in, though it has not had a window survey, it's been asked, the window survey shows all the windows in the building being replaced, and obviously the new ones in the addition. We had more supplemental information, which was basically the historic, what he dragged out, more reiteration of things, changes of the things. But what is illuminating is the original submission showed the rear L only being demolished and the new one being put on. Just the rear L, again, is circled as they're coming off. Obviously, they had to sister into the back of the house, so that shows a new section coming off the back of the roof. But nothing else. Minutes, revisions asked for, he agreed to do the revisions. Wholesale removal and destruction of all the windows was not contemplated at the time. We've asked for the window survey at least twice here. He stated no original windows left at that time, that was May. No window survey to verify that was still provided. We may lose the window replacement issue here, because we didn't get it. It was held out on the June 3rd because we didn't have a quorum, and June 10th is when we finally made, our court clearly discussed why windows were not salvageable again, but again, no window survey provided. We should have demanded one. We still do not have a demo plan. The motion required demolition plans and photographic evidence of the existing structure. None were provided, and it was let out of the office inappropriately without getting the conditions met that we had required. That's backed up by the minutes. We had an email objection. There was a particular trim detail, remember, that she wanted added back in because it was particular to that house. It was under the eave. I still don't know if that's been added back in. The neighbor mentioned it, and we did have a picture of that
Yes.
because we brought it up, and he said he was gonna replicate that. I don't know if it's been replicated because it's up there and I'm staying away from the property. The thing that he sent out to the neighbors said partial demo, major renovations and addition. Then he put in another supplemental application, he didn't date this one. Reclaim building unfit for human habitation from height and abandonment. We can't take that. We don't have that verified by somebody, that it's not fit for human habitation, it's been abandoned. We all know that she died some years
That was-
before that.
And I
Total
think that-
renovation, demolish rear L. Again, this is from Mark Poor. Restore dwelling, in his words. Return windows back to original 6/6. Pattern Lancaster, it mentioned that. Remove, somewhere along the line they'd been replaced, so we know that a lot of the 2/2s were not there. Remove rear L. New foundation and new finishes. Yes, that's to be expected. You can't deliver those shingles. Back to the minutes again. We, on May 19th of this year, the HDC voted unanimously to ask the building commissioner to issue a cease and desist stop work order immediately. At that point, it had been over a month since we asked him. They were allowed to proceed without restraint. He gave them a chance to continue rapidly in order to basically keep going. I asked him in the office in front of another witness why it was allowed to keep going and why he did not honor the request from the HDC on a violation of our COA upon which the building permit was issued. So if they're in violation of the COA that we voted on, then the building department should have issued the cease and desist, because upon which they based the issuance of the building permit. He sat right there in the office and told me point blank that he sees these old structures being removed one wall at a time and he doesn't stop them. I said, you want to admit that to me? And he said, yes. Fine. So it kept going. But at that point, there was absolutely no historic fabric left, because I went up there the night after they removed the front of it. Our HDC plans, which calls out, and this was a pain in the copy, I'll get it for you. Our HDC approved plans, stamped plans, had the site plan and that picture that one side that we had with their site plan there. Showing no demolition of that front section. Does show the 6/6 is being protected. And we have nothing in here, this is the original HDC plans, with again, the windows being replaced, so there you go. Nothing in here, no demolition plan. Our file ends with the window schedule, that's it. We have the floor plans and the elevations and the site plan and the window schedule. That's it, that's all we have, and that's all we saw. So those are our stamped plans. So then, we've done the timeline. On the building, or on our file, because we notate what's everything in that file every time somebody comes in for something. 1988 chimney reline, 2007 demo, there was a shed in the side yard. 2010 shingle, I don't know if they ever did that. 2013 interior demo, I don't know if they ever did that either. And 2014 add, demo, alter. In order to alter, you actually have to have a structure left to alter. Alter does not mean demolition. Okay, so that's that file. This is where it gets really interesting. This is the building department file. It was my understanding that only a licensed contractor or the property owner with waivers of liability are allowed to sign with their number a building permit application.
Not true.
Okay, so who can sign?
The owner.
That's what I said, the owner with a, owner's
Yes,
liability,
Correct,
or a licensed contractor.
correct.
The building permit application was taken and issued based on Mark Poor's signature with no building contractor number.
Yeah,
And Scott
that's-
not signing it, and the owner not signing a liability waiver, which a lot of us have done in our own homes.
Yeah, no, that's.
Okay? So that was issued based on Mark Poor's signature on the building department application, which is right there, which was filled out entirely by Mark Poor. Okay?
No,
So
we'll
when you get
make
to
the
the front of
assumption,
it-
I believe it's a correct assumption that Mark Poor is not a licensed contractor.
No, and he didn't put his number down, so it should not have been accepted.
Because if you were, then it would be okay.
Yeah, so on the front of the building department file, we have partial demo. Goes over there. Partial demo. Two-story rear L. Elevate the balance of the structure, which they didn't pick it up and they did move it over. Why they bothered and then demolished it, I don't know. A new fuller cellar area, full cellar, most of those houses have basements. Renovate first and second floors. Partial finished basement, I believe that's what he's talking about. Construct addition, two-story, we know that. It went from 300 square feet to about 422 on the rear, because they include the basement, I believe. Full basement and playroom, storage, mechanicals, et cetera, et cetera. But it says partial demo, two-story rear L, elevate balance of structure on new full cellar, renovate first and second floors. So we keep moving, and then we got an irregularity with who signed and got the permit. The building permit, 1798-14, issued December 2nd, 2014, had a bunch of hoorah going on since we approved it. We had no idea at the HDC in December of 2014 that the conditions on the COA that we signed had been released without the pictures and without the demo plan. Okay? Permit itself was issued in error as well. The scope of work is not listed correctly. It states relocate on lot, presupposing that there is a structure to relocate and maintain, which they did pick it up and move it. It states renovate entire dwelling, presupposing there is a dwelling to renovate. A lot of renovation relates here on Nantucket to interior work, does not come to the HDC because we don't see that stuff. Nowhere does the permit state demo even the rear L. Butler's the one responsible for filling out the building permit and telling the staff what to tell it. It should have said demo and reconstruct rear L. It doesn't. With the structure currently covered by a blue tarp, at that point we couldn't see what was going on. Again, a violation because the building permit has to be visible at all times. And after we blew the whistle on this and they kept working, which you're probably not aware of the whole sequence of events here, but we live here. They covered it with a blue tarp so we couldn't see what they were doing underneath the tarp, and the building permit was not visible.
I went and saw that.
Everybody in the neighborhood saw it. Because these are one-way streets, Diane, for your edification. In order to get to the other streets, to get to your homes, everybody has to go up Lyons and go
Right.
and come back. So it was like, you couldn't miss it. Everybody on the street was sitting there watching it with fascination. But here's the building permit. Relocate on lot and renovate entire dwelling. Finished basement. Nowhere does the building permit track the building permit application or say that they're demolishing the rear L, which it has to say, or renovating what they're renovating. So the building permit has some anomalies, and nowhere along the line,
Who does sign that?
Butler, nowhere on the line, nowhere does it say demolition of anything. Problem. Zoning Board of Appeals decision, and you probably remember that, I was the zoning administrator.
I do remember that.
25 years. It's not our first go-round. They gave a permit to alter the pre-existing non-conforming structure because of the setbacks, the size of the lots, things like that. Portion of the rear L, demolishing a portion of the rear L and by adding massing and shed dormers, portion of the structure that is outside the setbacks. Further intends to raise the height of the structure from 28 feet to no higher than 30 feet. I'm not going to quibble about 6 inches. We said 29.6. It's the same thing. Maximum allowable height pursuant. Construct a new porch on the northeast side of the structure, we know that. Work consists of shifting the structure north and east on a new foundation and a partial demolition of the rear of the structure. In addition to the portion of the structure that is outside the setbacks, will bring the dwelling's entire ground cover to just over 1,000 square feet. Locus undersized lot, we know that. The structure, a 929 square foot single-family dwelling, is pre-existing, non-conforming with respect to setbacks, being sited as close as 3 feet from the northerly rear yard lot line and 5.5 feet from the westerly, which is the one they moved away from. And his zoning use requires 5 feet. Nowhere is it demolished, because they might have put themselves into jeopardy with a demolition because of all the nonconformities. If you take it out of a setback and you demolish it out of a setback, you need a special permit to put it back in the setback. But they picked the whole structure up to preserve the grandfathering, moved it over, but it's still in the setback, and they gave them permission to stay in the setback. But if you demolish the structure, then it becomes an issue, well, what happened to the structure? It is no longer there. So there may be an issue with the zoning permit, we're not exactly sure. But it was removed from the setback after they took it over and put it down to the deck, one wall at a time, which is what we've had issues with at the ZBA for years. People one wall at a time are leaving a corner post to stay in the setback. That doesn't work anymore. The real problem for this particular applicant, and I must preface this by saying the owner of the property appears to be blameless, because I know he was terribly surprised when the cease and desist was issued. I don't think he was fully aware, because he's done a lot of projects here and he's done them well. There's never a problem getting a COA sign off from the HDC on any of his projects. He's very conscientious and he spends a lot of time with the details. I'm fairly sure by the comments made to me by the builder, the owner had no idea this was going on. Unfortunately, the designer and the builder did. The owner, unfortunately, under the law, is responsible. The buck stops at the owner's desk. But I hesitate to blame David for any of this because of all the other projects I've worked on. But the builder and the architect, the designer, knew exactly what was happening. Because in a letter, I don't know, Diane, if you've seen this letter, on July 7th, 2014, pursuant to our, this is to Steve Butler, pursuant to our discussion last week in your offices, from Mark Core.
Okay.
Pursuant to our discussion last week in your offices, which was after our June 10th grant of the CLA, I'm communicating with you to inform you of plans pending for the renovations and remodeling of the premises on the above-mentioned locus within the old historic district of the town of Nantucket. The work was subject to review by the Historic District Commission and obtained a certificate of appropriate number 61829, issued on June 10th, 2014, after 3 months of intensive scrutiny, April, May, and June. The policy of the commission is to disallow the use of any insulated glazing components within the OHD without exception. Not necessarily true. This holds true for our application. That's why they're using Brosco's. This component alone will achieve a non-compliance or failure when calculating the energy compliance under 2012 IEC standards, which have taken full effect on July 1st, 2014, all of which we are painfully aware of, which is why we always write letters of historic determination to get them out of it.
I'm sorry, that was a 2014
Yeah.
email that you're reading?
No,
Oh,
this came from...
I thought it was.
Yeah, this is an actual letter from Mark Ford and Steve Butler, July 7th, 2014. This is in the building department file.
Okay, so that
But
was
the-
way before the cease and desist was issued?
Yeah, we didn't know this was
Right,
happening.
okay, got it.
Year before.
Okay.
But we had issued the approval on June 10th of 2014.
Right. No,
And they
I
didn't get the
remember
building permit
seeing
for
that.
6 months after that. Okay, 3 months of intensive scrutiny by us. We are well aware in the old historic districts and with historic structures such as this one, that the energy code compliance is impossible with all the historic houses here. So what we end up doing, it depends on the proportion of the work being done, whether they have to fully comply or not fully comply. And we've written many letters to, on behalf of the applicants, that this is an historic structure, windows need to match, they need to be single glazed, true divided light in the old historic district, you know, that kind of stuff. Write them all the time. And we could have, if we'd been asked, we would have written it for this one. But he's fully aware of the fact that we write these letters and that you can get waivers. And in the building code, which Mark should have known, and Scott admitted to me he did not know, there's, because of the state and how many historic structures are in this state, there's a huge section in the building code, as large as it is, huge section in the building code about exemptions for historic structures. He has the power to issue the waivers, Steve does, and we have the power to write the letter in favor of it, asking for it, and we haven't been turned down yet. But he didn't ask for it. He was well aware of it. So
Can I-
keep
No,
going.
hang on.
Okay.
I do want to stop on that point, sorry, Lee.
He keeps going, believe me.
No, but I want to just put this in a time frame. What, because I have experience with this,
Yeah,
as you know.
and I owe you a letter.
One of, well, you've given me several, actually, and one of the first times that this ever came up was 28 Shell Street out in Wisconsin.
No, we've done them before that.
Well, if you did, it was just a few, because you were still working the language out with Steve Butler.
Still, but we had done it
Okay.
a couple of times before
But
that.
I don't believe that anyone, including Mark Poor, knew that that option was available to us in 2014.
Yes, he did. We've been doing it for at least 2 years.
Well, then
It was
I-
the language that was
I'm totally out
getting
of touch
screwed
with
up
the
with
times.
Steve. He knows, he's been sitting here.
Okay, so
But in
anyways,
any
to
case, he
continue.
could have come back and asked us about it, because Steve also knew we'd written the letters, because he has them. So we'll keep going, but that's not where the real problem occurred.
Okay, I want to also address that, but that's
To
fine.
further exacerbate the situation, but the building code, Diane, has it, a huge section of it in there telling you how to get it. To further exacerbate the situation, the framing techniques used in the 1800s, I've never heard anybody say this on any project, will hamper our ability to provide a building envelope in strict compliance with the new standards. That means
Is he
not
talking
a
about the
single
energy code?
Yep, not a single old building on Nantucket's gonna meet the energy code, so they all gotta go. That's what Scott said to me. So let's keep going. While we intend to make every best effort to provide an energy efficient envelope within the existing portions of the structure to remain intact, I believe we will need variance relief at the state level to move forward with the project, which is not true. We ask that you respond accordingly to this request, that we may set things in motion in Boston. Please direct us with appropriate contact information, BVRS or other, in your written response. If an email response is acceptable and reasonable to the state, we look forward to receiving same. Should you wish to have a meeting in our office to discuss more particulars, I'm willing to be available for your consideration. What this alludes to is they had been communicating before the HDC ever saw it, because that's what he alluded to, previous conversations. Okay? And we didn't hear anything about energy efficiency, energy compliance, because most of the designers and architects know they got an issue when they come in here, because they know the law. My conversation on site on May 16th, I believe, yes, May 16th, I went up to the site because I kept getting reports that one wall was missing, then another wall was missing, and I said, look, they have the right to take the rear wall down. They said, oh no, it's the east wall that's missing. Then it was the west wall that's missing, and the night of May 15th, guys, out in the hall, please. On the night of May 15th, I got a call from a neighbor who has to go down and come back to get to his house, that the front wall disappeared and was nothing there. So Friday afternoon was as soon as I could get up there. I went up there Friday afternoon, stood in the street, looked at it, took pictures, nothing left, because you could still see inside the whole house. And Saturday I went back up there.
Can I just, this is my main question on this entire thing. So when you were there, there was literally
Not-
no house. The house was.
No, that they had reconstructed the east wall,
No, but the
the
house-
addition, and the west wall.
At
There was
what point
nothing
was
left
the
of
house
us.
completely
Nothing
gone?
left of us. That Thursday night, apparently, when the front wall came down, they quickly put up the plywood.
Okay.
Okay? Not much, because it's not a very big house. Didn't take long to put it back up. When I went back up there Saturday morning, because I got a call about another house 2 blocks away, where they demolished part of it with no permit from us. So I was up there at
You
Martha
mean-
Allen's house. And I-
This is the same thing that's happening there.
Oh,
They
I don't,
have literally
let's not go
two-
there.
but
I
they have
know.
2 sticks.
I had
left in
already
that
blown the
house.
whistle on that, and he refused to stop that
Okay,
also.
all right.
That's
Just-
already come
just-
up, and he admitted they didn't have a permit for some of the demolition, but he let them go anyway because they got that far.
Okay.
This is the same thing that happened here, but the whole house was gone already. So I went up Saturday morning, and Scott came off the property. We were standing in the street, because none of us have ever entered the property. You don't have to. It's like there.
Right on the street.
And Scott O'Connor mentioned, I said, Scott, are you aware that there's an entire section for waivers for historic structures, and you got all these issues with historic structures, and we try to work with it? You know, 1x4, 2x4 construction, if you have that even.
And his answer was no.
I didn't know. Nobody told me. I said, did Mark Poor tell you?
Totally believe it.
Because most of the designers and architects that I've spoken to since then said that they always make sure that they are aware of that there are waivers and stuff like that, and be careful what you remove. No idea. And I said, then we went through the window thing again, and I said, you don't have to take a structure down, because you'd have to take every structure down in town. And I said, well, this is his first time working on an historic structure of that age.
Untrue.
That's what he told me.
11 Lincoln Circle.
Yeah, but that Lincoln Circle is 100 years younger than this one. Remember, I lived on Lincoln Circle.
Still like very,
But it's
very
100
old.
years younger and has a little different construction. This is an 1800 house, if not earlier, but it's probably 1800,
Yeah,
give or
that's
take a
what-
few
that's
years.
what Lincoln
And he
Circle
said
is.
he had no idea that there was an exemption for the historic structure. And and then he said to me with his hands like this, how am I supposed to meet the energy codes if I don't take it down and put it back up? And I said, I'm not discussing it any further. That's the last time that's gonna happen, because we've been very tough with everybody since then. Okay? So there you go on that part of it. Then you get to, I forget what they call this plan, the renovation and addition plan, which is what they call it. The renovation and addition plan, this we never saw. Okay? This is in the building department file. That's it. Where do you see the hash marks for the demolition of the rear L? Do you see demolition of the rear L?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see any demolition of the front piece? Existing to remain. Okay, we'll move on.
Where does it say existing to remain?
Right on the plan. Okay, so we'll keep going. When I reviewed the plans, which are again, I needed help copying. That's not what the HDC approved. The HDC, and he forgot to put in one of the stamped copies, but this is all HDC, supposedly. It matches ours, I looked at it, because this is not a stamped page. He didn't put the stamp page in, because ours has the stamp page. So somebody collated, deliberately collated, because there's no stamp on that page. Here's the HDC stamp on the other pages, which match ours. June 10th. Here's our floor plans, which we saw. There's our window schedule. And I believe you forgot one of the floor plans. Not a big deal. And then remember I showed you where ours ended? With the window schedule, the other floor plan's on the back in the wrong place. Okay. 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 See all the construction plans? Joist plans, that kinds of stuff. See it? Nothing left. This was attached to the HDC plans in our COA as if we saw this. We never saw any of it. Okay? They're not allowed to do that. If they're going to submit something that Steve needs, it's not attached to the ones that are inside the COA. That's what we saw, that's what we approved. These don't get attached to that, as if we saw. I'm not looking at you at all.
As a point of clarification.
I didn't recognize you, Steve. Do not open your mouth until we're done, and then we will take comments. This was not in our plans. It's attached to our COA. Little
In the
confusion
same
there.
packet.
It's attached to the COA approved plans. I've never seen these until I went through the building department file. I'm not interested in what anybody else has to say. Our COA, what we see inside our COA, is what we see and what we approve. We didn't approve any of the rest of that. It should not be attached to this file. What Steve needs, and he needs to ask them for it, and they give it to him. But that's not appropriate at all. regardless of what is said. And if that's been going on a regular basis, that will stop. Because what we see, what we approve, is what we need to have. Yep.
In the list of things to provide for the building department, it clearly says the HDC stamp plans are to be stapled to the construction plans.
That's fine, but it looks like we saw it and we did not. And if that's what's happening, we're not aware that that's happening. We know what we saw, what we based our decision on, which is not CDs, it's not joist plans, it's not framing plans with LVLs, it's none of that stuff. That's not what we see.
Right.
So if that's been going on, that's the first time I've ever heard it, and that's not appropriate at all.
It's on our list.
That's great, but it's not going to be there much longer, more than likely, because that's not appropriate.
I want to make sure that I understand that point. So Val, coming from fellow architect who should know this, are you saying that when it gets submitted to Steve's office, that the HDC plans are literally stapled to all the
Correct.
structural stuff?
That's on the checklist.
That's part of the
Right.
the procedure every time?
Correct.
Well,
Steve,
that's
you have some
inappropriate.
raised hands back here.
I've been doing that for 20 years.
Okay, Stephen, have you been doing that?
Could I be recognized?
No, not right this
Well, I
second.
just want to see if that's a procedure.
Clearly,
Well, it
it's
seems-
on the checklist,
okay.
and that's not going to happen.
All right, just so that we're clear on whether, it's a violation of a procedure or a continuation of a procedure.
But what, the real concern here with these plans is that they show none of the building. And it's attached to ours renovation and keep the front part of the building. That's not what that shows. So then apparently, another set of plans was put in after the September group came in after that. Framing plans submitted after the original plan submitted in the building permit application. The plans that came in with the application. Another set of plans was brought in, and then 11/18, Steve Butler approved them. So this is a foundation plan, an entry floor framing plan, nothing left. Upper level floor framing plan, an attic level floor plan. And when you look at what the beams are, I don't think they had LVLs back then, 12-inch beams and 6-inch
Well,
walls. They didn't.
They
had
need to
2x4 construction, if you're lucky.
reinforce the old building,
Okay.
there's no question.
Then we've got the joist plans. Where are they? What's left? Then we've got the, here they go with the big members. And they don't believe they had a ridge beam back in the day, but there is one. Get the chimney framing detail, stuff like that, none of which we saw. So when it came around to realizing 6 months after they got, 6 months and change after they got the building permit, that the building wasn't there, they left me a corner post apparently, which I could see in my pictures, the front right corner post, and a couple of purlins strung up in the new rafters on the new roof.
Madam Chairperson.
That's not it. So that's the end of that. There's some
Madam
other
Chairperson,
stuff. Yeah.
but I would like to request that Mr. Butler answer Mr. Pohl's question. I'd like to hear what he's got to say. He's involved in this, and it drags him into something that shouldn't be happening.
Well,
Could he answer the question?
administrative, that's where that's going.
I'm
We
sorry?
want to ask him the question about whether these are regularly attached. Apparently, that's the case.
I think I know what the answer is, Steve, but could you just clarify that for us? When you receive a set of plans, Val has said, and Brooke has corroborated, that the HTC set, which is stamped, is stapled together with a set of structurals.
May I speak?
You can
I
answer
think-
that
yeah,
question.
In this particular case, the HTC, and in a lot of cases, the HTC drawings come in separately, and the structural drawings come in separately in two separate files.
Okay.
I oftentimes segregate the HTC drawings because the HTC may have floor plans which are not relevant,
Right.
and I will take only the 2 relevant pages or 3 relevant pages of the HTC, which could include the site plan and any plan or any page that is stamped. I will take those and staple them to my set. If the chair copied her set, my
Your set.
file set,
Yeah.
that would have included just those segregated drawings. I have no need for repetitious drawings or drawings that could otherwise mislead anybody. So I eliminate plans that are not rolling. And those plans are the ones that are not stamped.
Just so you
And
know,
staple them together.
in this case, they are stapled exactly as they are in the building department file. If we now go into that file and we find them segregated, that's not the way they were in the building department file. They were actually stapled to, now whether Mark Poor did that or somebody else, they were stapled to the COA plans, and there is duplication because it's the same site plan a couple of times, et cetera, but that was stapled together by somebody else, not me. We did it exactly as it came out of the file. So in this case, all of the basically showing demolition of the structure was attached to the COA renovation. And the other indications in the building department file and everything in our file show the front piece staying up. Obviously shingles, roof shingles, sheathing, new windows, we already got over that. Except that stuff is a given, generally speaking. But the structure remains up. The front side and the two sides, give or take how they're sistering, and the new L in the back. Which is why we asked for the demo plan before the COA was released, and we didn't get it, and it was released without it. So we didn't have it, and the COA going to the building department didn't have it, and the plan that the monkey plan that they put in shows the box and the box with a hash mark. That plan shows demolition of the rear L, and the front box says existing to remain. That was the only demo plan that was put into the building department file that was not given to the HDC at any time. And that was, I think, back in September or somewhere in there that came into the building department file, not to our file. And it again said the front to remain. So that's why we took a vote here, and we issued the request for cease and desist. Subsequent to that, when the building commissioner refused to issue it, because there were some questionable issues about the windows in the basement and the chimney, and we have to cave on the windows. The chimney was still not applied for, which is something you'll probably have to officially apply for. And the foundation looked like it was farther out of the ground than what we asked for, but again, it wasn't backfilled.
Right.
So those things were of question because we didn't have any confirmation of those particular issues. But what the main issue was is that it was demolished one wall at a time. And so nothing's left. So that's the problem. And then subsequent to that, we brought town council in. He advised us that the HDC had the right to issue the cease and desist order on our own. Enforcement order on our own. There has been some disagreement among the attorneys involved that we had the right to do that. That's one of, I believe it was in one of your
What is
letters,
the
Diane.
difference
Correct.
between a cease and desist and an enforcement order?
A couple of years ago, the HDC had asked us for opinions about their enforcement authority.
Right.
And an issue, the context in which it had originally arisen was somebody was using an actual cease and desist form that looked like it was from the building inspector.
I remember.
And it
Oh,
was
yes.
quite,
Yeah.
it was something we
We went up to
recommended
Cliff Road
against.
and took one of the building department's orange things, and we filled it out, and he stuck it under the shingle. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we said was, we recommend you do not do that.
Yeah.
Because the building inspector has entirely separate jurisdiction and duties and enforcement authority and cease and desist authority. But what we did say to the HDC, and this is part of your record because it was submitted by the attorney for the property owner.
Yeah.
We said that you could issue a enforcement letter to a property owner if there was an enforcement issue. And we gave a template form that your enforcement letter was used for in this case. And what we pointed out there is that you do have enforcement, quite a bit of enforcement authority under the special legislation which governs your jurisdiction, and also under the town code, that you have the ability to go through a ticketing procedure, per day fines. You have fining authority under the act. You have the ability to seek a criminal misdemeanor conviction. And then you have the ability to seek injunctive relief, seeking enforcement in Superior Court. So what we said from that basis of enforcement authority that you have, that in order to try to get voluntary compliance from a property owner, it's a good way to, first of all, it's a good way of documenting your case if you end up, unfortunately, that you do have to end up in front of a Superior Court judge. It's nice to start out that you're trying to resolve it cooperatively. So you'd send out a letter that calls out attention to it, that this is an enforcement letter. Enforcement issues are occurring at your property. Come meet with us, resolve it, and if not, we'll consider what next steps we need to take.
Right.
So that's where that came in.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have to revisit that at some point, because I still don't think that we've got new members and not everybody's clear on this. Ticketing versus letter versus, this is the first time we've had to issue a letter directly to stop somebody. So where we are now is, how do we resolve it? Clearly, you've got to make an application, just to clear up the chimney issue, if nothing else. You've got to make an application to ask to demolish the structure and then prove why the structure needed to be demolished.
That's not the way I see things, and I'd appreciate an opportunity to
I just wanna make
address
sure
the
that-
board.
Yeah.
If
Do you have
that's,
anything else to add at the moment?
No.
Okay.
okay. Well, first of all, I want to,
Record.
thank
So
you.
she's got it for the
Yes.
tape.
Diane Tillotson, and I represent the property owner, 1 Lion Street LLC, and Dave Rogers, who is the owner, as well as Scott O'Connor and Mark Poor, who are also obviously involved in the project. I'd like to start out by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to come here this afternoon, and actually for putting this first on the agenda so that we could actually get heard and hopefully leave the island before, on the same day. My client and I very much appreciate that. I don't come to Nantucket all that often, but whenever I do, I'm always impressed with, frankly, the work you do, and I've looked at your agendas, and I'm amazed at the number of matters that you take up. So I know that you're very busy. I want to tell you that your work is appreciated by me. I have a lot of respect for the Historic District Commission's jurisdiction. My client and his team as well have that respect. I've heard a lot and read a lot in your chairperson's notes of suggestions that either Mark Poor was deliberately misrepresenting or Scott was deliberately misrepresenting, and I want to assure you that that is not the case. My client and his team members take this matter very seriously. We've spent countless hours going through the notes that have been provided to us, going through the meeting minutes, going through the plans, to try to discern, first of all, what the history of the project was, how we got here today, and where we hope we're going to be in the future. And I will represent to all of you that there was no deliberate or even casual misrepresentation of any facts in this project. My client and his team have spent a lot of time. It's taken a lot of my time. I know it's taken a lot of town council's time to try to sort through the facts here. What I would like to end up with at the end of the day today is a withdrawal of that July 1st cease and desist order. And let me first of all say that there should be no mistake in your minds. This is a stop work order. It may be dressed up to look like, I'm not sure what the reference was, a ticket, a notice of violation, an enforcement action. It says, the commission hereby demands that you cease and desist from any further demolition and construction of exterior architectural features. I don't think that that's a ticket. I don't think it's a notice of enforcement. It is a cease and desist order. Our contractor, Scott O'Connor, will not do any exterior work on that site. His lawyer, I have 2 of his lawyer's letters, which I'm happy to share with you this afternoon. His lawyer has told him he should not do that. He is opening himself up to liability. He has to work on the island. Mark Poor works on the island. Their reputations have been very seriously assaulted in this action. There have been statements in the press, and they're very, very concerned about that. But again, we have not been able to do work. I have photographs that were taken July 3rd, frankly, before they received the order that you issued. July 3rd, July 31st, and just a couple of days ago, that show the state of the outside of the building. There has been no exterior work done, with two exceptions. We had to disturb the neighbor to the west's property somewhat in order to do the building, and we actually repaired and put back her driveway, which made sense. And secondly, there was a very small amount of waterproofing done on the foundation of the property. There are a lot of reasons that I think the cease and desist order should be withdrawn. I think, for one thing, it does extend far beyond your jurisdiction. But what I'm hoping to do this afternoon is to perhaps short-circuit some of that and get to a presentation of the facts from our perspective and the way we see the facts. And I'm hoping that based on our presentation or on what you see as the facts, after I have had an opportunity to speak with you and to present certain things, that you will agree to withdraw that so-called enforcement order, cease and desist order. If there are specific violations that need to be addressed, we'll be happy to address those. But as I've listened to the chairperson, and as I hear and have reviewed the documents in the file, I don't see that it is appropriate to issue even a notice of violation in this case. I will start by saying that there is a very good reason that you do not see an application for a total demolition of the building, and that is that from our perspective, there was no total demolition of the building. The applicant came in with a request to demolish the rear L of the building and to renovate, restore the remainder of the building, and that is precisely what was done. The application to you very clearly stated that all new exterior finishes and windows would be included. I brought with me, not that I think it's necessary because apparently the windows are off the table. There was a lot of discussion about the windows. I actually had someone in my office sort of transcribe the video from the meeting at which the minutes from the meeting at which those windows were discussed, and apparently this commission agreed, or a majority of you agreed, that the window survey wasn't necessary and agreed to issue the the approval, the COA, without that. Again, there was no subterfuge there. It was openly and actively discussed at the meeting. With respect to the stapling of the plans, and Mark Poor said, yeah, it's what I do, it's what they tell us to do, so I did it. Whether you think it's appropriate or not, I am convinced that the building department certainly understands the difference between the elevations that get submitted to you in the course of your review and construction drawings that are necessary in order for the building department to issue a building permit. It's not rocket science, and frankly, there's no basis for submitting complete construction drawings to you. With respect to the chimney, the so-called faux chimney, which is exactly what it's called on the plans that were submitted to you, whether or not it's called out on the application or the COA itself, all of those are incorporated by reference into your discussion and into the COA. And I give this board and its staff credit. You I know you go through those drawings and those applications because there was a lot of discussion about the windows that was shown on the drawing, and more detail was required. You saw the chimney exactly where it's located. You saw that it's a faux chimney, and by the way, it's a faux chimney because it's not going to be operating. You also had the interior plan just sort of showing the layout of the rooms that was also submitted simultaneously with the elevations. And that doesn't show the fireplace, the chimney, whatever you would have down below. It does show the faux chimney. The faux chimney will be complete brick, full bricks. It's not going to be veneer. It's going to be historically appropriate, and it was included on the approved plans. So I don't think there's a basis for us to come in with a new application. With respect to the demolition, I think that is an issue. I understand that you have an issue with buildings taken down. Let me describe a little bit what happened here, which is that the applicant applied for and received a permit to remove this building from its foundation because there was no debate about the fact that the foundation needed to be repaired and restored, and a new foundation needed to be poured, that the foundation was in such poor condition that that needed to happen. In order for that to happen, the building had to be moved off the foundation. The way the process worked was that prior to the, after the building permit was issued in December of last year, the first thing that happened was that that rear L portion was demolished. Then the entire structure was picked up and moved approximate, well, as far as it could be, just about to the east side lot line. Then the new foundation was poured. Then the entire building was moved back before anything else happened. At that point, they looked at a lot of the structural components which were damaged by beetle post,
Powder post.
thank you, thank you, powder post beetles, rot, and they began removing selectively, initially, selectively. The west wall basically had to be removed almost in its entirety because of the zero lot line setback. They needed to comply with the fire code for that particular structure. There may be applicable relief that you can receive from certain of the energy code requirements. There are none for the fire code. Fire code is a state safety code that needed to happen. The structure, that wall was then put up before anything else was removed. So there was no time period when the entire structure was removed and destroyed. I understand that for you that may be a matter of semantics. However, if someone wanted to demolish a structure or raise a structure, they wouldn't spend $150,000 to move it from point A to point B and then restore it detail by detail. There are, some of the corner posts remain, the lintels remain, thank you. And I was there today and saw them. They're very clearly there. There is not, I agree, a lot of the rest of the interior that remains, but the base frame of those lintels very clearly sets out exactly where that building was. This is not a demolition. A demolition would be to destroy, to raise, to take away completely. That did not happen here. Moreover, each and every one of those components, as those rotted and bug-infested materials were taken down from the wall, each and every one of those components was very carefully put back exactly. Not the original wood, not the original beam, but it was put back almost exactly the way the original house was laid out. the original house, not the one that was there in 1950, the original house, consistent with a lot of the original structures. What you will see, and what you do see actually, is the house is almost finished. From the outside is precisely the historic structure, with the exception of that rear portion, which was allowed to be demolished and which you approved the elevations for. So again, I know we can quibble about what is a true demolition and what is not. This also apparently is consistent, and again, I don't do a lot of work on the island, I'm sure, and I know everybody around this table does a lot more than I do, but apparently this is consistent with what is done on many other buildings on the island, where people begin to do a restoration project, a rehabilitation project, and find that more of the structure is rotted than they originally anticipated. And I will say I appreciate that the chair has worked with Dave Rogers before. I have not. This is the first time I've worked with him, but I do know for the past month and a half that based on my conversations with him and with the builder and with Mark Poor, that he was involved in, you know, conversations about how do we best do this, what's the best approach for that. They very carefully did this. There was no attempt to skirt by the jurisdiction. They really were operating at all times in good faith. Again, I think I've discussed enough of the chimney. With respect to the ridgeline, again, an example of how concerned they are that of the allegations that have been made. It's a reputational thing for these folks. They earn their living on this island. Scott and Mark do. I have prepared and stamped today a confirmation of the ridgeline elevation drawings that I brought, a sufficient number for all of you, confirming that the ridgeline is exactly where you approved it, that the size of the building is exactly as you approved it. With
We don't have the file here, but
okay.
give it to John.
I have sufficient, I think I have sufficient copies for all of you. If you want to pass that down.
That's what I said earlier to address that. We weren't sure because
Okay.
it had been backfilled. We didn't have the dimensions. We didn't have some of the information. It just, we had to question it.
Yep.
The main issue for us is the demolition of the structure.
Right. And I understand that. And that's a discussion, but I'd just like to make one note. And again, I don't work here. I know you guys are, just from the length of your agendas, I know you're incredibly busy. You meet twice a week. I don't know any other board or commission in the Commonwealth that meets that often. Not even Cambridge. So I appreciate that you're all busy, but you know, if these issues come up, if there's a question about the windows, somebody said they're vinyl, they're plastic, they don't look.
We addressed it. We sent somebody over there.
Okay, I was going to say just or call Mark or call Scott and say, can you give us the, you know, the info on the windows or
We
on
told
this
them
or
they were
that.
probably the storms because the windows hadn't been put in yet.
Yep.
So we just backed everybody off of that.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. And then, again, so I understand the issue of the demolition. I understand that to you, it may appear to be a demolition. This is not what a builder thinks of as a demolition, and it's not even really what I looked through, although I must say I had some difficulty parsing through some of the terms that builder's guide on Nantucket. I read through it, trying to figure out, okay, where does this come out? And there are a lot of gray areas, suffice it to say, in that builder's guide.
This is why I'm doing a seminar for the Builders Association.
But I do think that this does not qualify as a demolition. A demolition is when you take the entire building down, and whether you put the same thing or something nearly the same up, but it's not when you take it down in a way that number one, preserve some of the structural elements, which has been the case here. Do it in such a way that you can replicate precisely as possible, given current codes, what's there. And again, there are some current codes that apply. And I want to go back to the issue that you raised with Mark in 2014. The reason that he was concerned, he was looking, he wanted to make sure first from Mr. Butler, the building commissioner, that variances would be allowed because that new energy code, which was much more stringent than the previous energy code, had just come into effect. It was effective July 1. His email correspondence was July 14th. The previous conversations that he alluded to were previous conversations with Mr. Butler, which make all the sense in the world. I mean, why wouldn't you check with the building commissioner on what the building commissioner's take was on the new energy requirements and whether variances were still permissible at the local level or whether you had to go to the state level? Again, there was no attempt to, hide, conceal, or go behind the back of the historic of your authority. The only thing, and I've been through this file, the only thing that I see that was not consistent with the COA was the fact that they did not submit that demolition plan. And we agree, and I sent it with my July 15th letter, and I hope that you've all had a chance to read both the July 15th letter and the July 21st letter that I submitted to the commission. I'm not going to repeat what I said there, but I think it's important that you all have that information in front of you. In any event, I think that it is it's compelling in that the only thing, after going through all of this material, that they did wrong was they didn't submit that demolition plan, and that the COA was let out of the office before it was submitted. But in retrospect, that demolition plan, as you so carefully pointed out a few moments ago, doesn't really show anything. It doesn't show you anything other than the elevations that you did receive. It shows the demolition of the rear L. Because at the time, and I understand what you're saying, but what you're saying isn't in your regulations. It's not clear. Again, the building department and no builder would consider this a total demolition because of the way it was done. And I think that to penalize my client without having any definitive regulation or something to go on in retrospect and saying, oh, you shouldn't have done all this, because in fact the building plans showed exactly what they were putting in for new materials, and that a lot of the structural elements, most of the structural elements, were new materials. So again, I'm here, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I do want to address just briefly, I think whether or not you agree with it, you have somewhat of a limited jurisdiction. You're not the zoning board, you're not the building commissioner. You can't issue lawfully a stop work order. You can't stop construction, but that's exactly what's happened here. And my clients have been unable to complete the construction on this house for now the past 7 weeks. And again, I have the letters from Scott's counsel basically saying, don't you dare do any exterior work. Your counsel and I have had some exchanges and agree, for the most part, that the work could probably continue. However, that wasn't good enough for Mr. O'Connor's counsel. And again, sitting from his perspective of being somebody that works on the island on a regular basis, I can understand that, and my client understands that. But we're now 7 or 8 weeks out. We have 2 windows to put in. We have to finish the shingles. We have to put on the gutters and the downspouts, all wood, all what you approved on the exterior plans. We have to finish the rear porch. When I went there today, I had to use a step ladder to climb up to get into the property. Front porch needs to go on, and we are respectfully, very respectfully, asking for you to withdraw the stop work cease and desist order and to allow us to complete the project. And I'm happy to take any questions any of you might have.
Okay, let me just clarify some stuff. We are becoming aware that various departments are well aware that historic structures are coming down one wall at a time, which is what happened here. The west wall first, I think the east wall second. The front came down the night of May 14th, as I received multiple phone calls and texts. For our purposes at the HDC, at least with consistency, I've been on almost 20 years. That is a demolition. Because in order to remove, and I'm just reading the statute here, we have total jurisdiction over the RAZING, raising of a structure or parts of it there, too.
I understand that.
And there's been far too much allowance, admittedly, of demolitions by one wall at a time. We weren't aware, we're never made aware when that's happening because we're stuck here. We generally don't visit the sites of these structures, but that's changing now. We're requiring threshold inspections, demo plans before they're even approved, and window surveys one window at a time because we just put another property through that. They came in with a demolition plan, one stud at a time, where it was going. If we had known when we made the approval on June 10th, that would never have been approved at that time, without that. Because had they submitted the demo plan, that was before they actually did the exploratory, had they submitted the demo plan to us before it was released, whether it was July or August, they would have been immediately in violation of that demo plan the minute they took the west wall down. Because the demolition plan we would have gotten showing the pieces off the back would never have shown the three main walls as demolished, because they wouldn't have gotten an approval from us, theoretically, given past history. So saying we've replicated, and it is a nice replication of the original house. Replication for HCC purposes here is not it. That's Disney World. And everybody, let me finish, because people have tried to use this argument before, and we're not buying it. What they should have done when they found out that they were infested, because many do now, when they find out they've got a wall that they weren't intending to take down, they stop. They don't take it down. You can clearly see the rot from the inside. They don't take it down. They come back here and explain to us with the pictures, the engineer, the whole 9 yards. We've done this with mold. They've had to take the wall off and show us that they have to do this because of X, Y, and Z, and they give us a new plan showing that wall hashed out and is being removed. They don't keep going. At least we weren't aware that this is being allowed. That will not happen anymore because they'll do the same thing. Because removing a structure from the historic district, a 200 and some odd year old structure, regardless of what was going on, and most of the houses had powder posts of some sort, some rot, sills, things like that. We are not going to approve demolishing one wall at a time, so they just kept going. Out of ignorance, perhaps, out of thinking they were doing the right thing, given all the codes, the fire thing, can't windows within 3 feet of a side yard, all that stuff, the neighbor, everything else going on, and it's tight. We need to have seen it again to have approved those walls coming down. That's the way it's supposed to work. That has not been the way it's been working, because we don't know when the walls come down unless there's a great hue and cry, which was happening with this one, because it's right in the middle of the historic district. You couldn't get around it. It was, everybody saw it. And when that happens now, everybody else from now on is suffering because we're not giving them an approval. We're having threshold inspections, which means we go out there every time they touch a wall as they're doing the process, because we have a 1780 house that's going through this now. But it's not Disney World. Demolition is demolition, whether they did it one wall at a time, whether it's powder post, whether it's rot, whether it's whatever. This house, for our purposes and under our act, I've got the section right here, is demolition of those 3 main walls. and the roof and all the studs, because you just don't have 2x12 rafters in this old house. I was in the old house when Martha was there. Couldn't get very far, but you were in the house. So we have a situation here. Do we completely throw everything out of the water because he did it one wall at a time, even though they appear to have justification? Or do they have to come back in here and say, look, these are the reasons why we demolished the walls, and we have to issue a demo permit, then we have to issue a fine, because the last person who used this number on us about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, was fined 25 grand to settle it. So we didn't keep going with injunctions and everything else, and that was headed into the winter, and he had to get going. He had to finish it. But it was over Thanksgiving weekend. He didn't think anybody would see it. We saw it. They paid the fine. Diane was, I think, on at that point.
Yep.
Who was that?
Up on Center Street. I don't want to go there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And everybody saw it. Again, it was right in the middle of the old historic district. How do you miss it? So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here, because if we say this is okay to take the building down without coming back to us when they get into problems,
Understood.
then what the hell? Why are we sitting here every week? Why do we have historic structures? And that's where I'm coming from, because I've already been through this a couple of times.
So can I make some observations, just in the interest of time?
Thank you.
At least it's still sunny.
Okay, first thing, you sat on the application originally, right?
Yes, I sat on.
Linda did, and John, did you?
Yes,
The
I'm-
three, so you have three members of this board right now that sat on the original application, two that did not, okay, just for the record. Now, anybody sitting at this table right now on the HCC board?
Actually, John did not sit on it.
Okay,
It was only three of us, remember?
Okay.
It was you, me, and Abby.
Okay.
That was it.
so, but anyone who's at this table right now has been through the classic HDC experience of an application comes in initially and it's out of town and it says white paint. And we say, oh, well, we are not going to approve white paint out of town. And then the weeks go by and the different revisions come in and this and that, and nobody bothers to change the white paint thing on the application. And then we forget about the white paint and we wind up approving the white paint. Well, they get white paint, and it's because it was an oversight. And I think in this case, I think to try and cast blame on the builder or Mark as a designer or the owner or anyone for that matter is going to be really difficult to do. And I think here we are, we have this situation. I agree with Linda that this is not something that we can just say, oh, well, it happened, so what? I will qualify that by saying that I think we all know this happens all the time.
And it shouldn't.
And it's happening right around the corner at Lion and Pine, and I feel like
I blew the whistle on that.
at intervals, and I've been on the receiving end of this at least twice. A whipping boy is chosen, and that's the way that we have this enforcement of the demo policy at the HCC. In other words, I believe that our demo policy is flawed. It's getting better because we are learning by experience. Again, as Linda said, now we're insisting on having window inventories submitted. We're insisting on having an itemized list on a demo plan of what plans to come out and so forth. So those things I think are improving. But, at every level, this is a very complicated business. We sit here at the table, and we have Mark Poor there, and Mark Poor hears what's said about the demo, and then he goes and he tells Scott about it, and Scott tells his foreman about it, and, it goes like that, and then the next thing you know, half the wall's gone. And everybody says, well, where did that wall go? Well, Mark didn't say take the wall down, it just kind of got taken down, because some guy out there with a hammer said, well, it was full of powder post beetle, what was I supposed to do?
Come back.
But the guy with the hammer doesn't know that. He
why
doesn't
it's
understand what's going on at this table. So all I'm saying is that, this is a complicated business, and I think that the documentation that we as a board should require with old houses is improving. It has room for more improvement. And I also believe that we should have sort of more uniform enforcement, rather than, what did you call it, the hue and cry. It's like, well, something's happening over there and nobody talks about it, and something happens here, and because people happen to round that corner every morning, all of a sudden it's on the front page of the papers.
Well,
which is-
it's been allowed to happen for many years now.
Well, it has
And it
not.
shouldn't be.
You know, there have been so many instances that have made the front page of this paper
Right.
about, no, do you remember Duck's Home? I was involved in Duck's Home out in Shawcamo. I was on the friolator for 6 months for that. And that was 20-something years ago. So it's not a brand-new phenomenon.
But you agree that allowing this, just doing nothing
no,
here,
No, I think that
that's going to keep on going, it's
Listen.
going to keep on being
Okay.
allowed.
First of all, no contractor or no architect or designer who reads the paper and sees somebody's name in there says, oh, you know, I don't mind if I get my name published in the paper. So there's a huge disincentive to stray from this thing. And builders, for the most part, out here, unless they're from off island and they're clueless, understand the issues. But what they don't understand is the nuances. And there are a lot of nuances here. Go ahead, sorry.
I want to just step in for a minute, is when you have a renovation or a demo or whatever of an old historic building, which was regarded as an old historic building to begin with, and the only reason that the back L we allowed to be demoed was it was up against that supporting wall, and it was rotten, and we knew it.
Well,
And it
Diane, it
wasn't-
also been shown on the Sanborn maps, it's been reworked.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I don't
over and
think
over and
that
over
was
again for
historic.
years.
Yeah,
But
I
it
don't think
was-
that was historic,
But
sorry.
it was in bad, really bad condition, at which we were all aware. And when you hire a builder to do a renovation of an old house who has been a builder, contractor here over a length of time, it's become somewhat of his responsibility, I think, to advise his workers, his foremen, of what they are working with. They're not building a new house out in Tom Nevers. They are restoring an old house here. And to perhaps say that his foreman didn't know that when he came across something that he was concerned about, he should have gone to his contractor, builder, and said, we're into this, we should look at it, and not continue the work. That should be established before a contractor starts in a house with as much concern as this house had. I think there are some responsibilities to the contractor to make this known, because I feel the way that Linda does and what it says in here is a one wall at a time removal is as far as we're concerned, a demo without any knowledge of coming back, having the contractor come back and say, we're in this position.
Nobody's questioning that it's not replicated correctly,
No,
because it is.
It is.
And so, but replication for us, and even in our act, is not it. Demolition is it for us. Not the fact that he didn't replicate it, because he did. They did a fine job on replicating it, and it's gonna be a beautiful house up there. Our issue is that in order to get to that point, they demolished the house. So nobody's questioning that it's replicated. The chimney, we can deal with that. But nobody's questioning the fact that it's not what it's supposed to be now. What we're questioning the fact is that they had no right, no permit to demolish any wall of the main structure. And the minute they took down the west wall, they should have not taken it down, because you could clearly see what was wrong with it on the inside. When you took the drywall off, you could see what was wrong with it. It's clear. Because powder coat, you can click, you just, there it is. Rot, there it is. And the sills were in the dirt, so we know that had to come up. They know they had to put a new sill under it, new foundation under it, because you could see that was bad. But the problem is, the minute they took one wall down, then they took the east wall down, and then on the night of the 14th of May this year, they took the front wall down, and the whole thing was exposed. You could see the whole inside of it, and all the new wood, and the new rafters, and the new walls, and the 2x6 construction, and forget the windows. All of it's gone, except for there was a corner post on that side, and I believe there's a corner post on this side. You can barely see that. There's a problem.
I think there's 3 left, and the lintel, the framing, the.
But there's no support posts, none of the posts are left, none of the rafters are left, the whole
The
thing's
rafters,
gone.
yes, that's right.
And the floor systems are changed because they wanted it stable, because she was a hoarder. So there's a lot of things going on in that building. But the minute the wall came down, or they needed to take the wall down, we exercise, even under the act language, full jurisdiction over the demo. And it could be we would have granted it. The problem is, they're not coming in all over the island, and they're just doing this one wall thing at a time, and it's been allowed to happen without reporting back to the HDC that this is going on, unless we drive by it. And we've got, 150 applications a week, and 3,000 to 5,000 a year. We're not driving by 5,000 projects. So that's going to change. It has been suggested by town council over the course of this whole saga that we develop a better policy on keeping track of what's being demolished and has to be relayed to us or stopped. So that will be looked into administratively.
Yeah, well, without.
So, but right now, we have an issue.
Yeah, without
Do we
making.
need to come back for a demo, de facto demo, officially, and pay the as-built fee, which is negligible? Or do we have to be consistent like we were with the one on Center Street, and we're gonna look like idiots if we don't? Or do we have to take some action or not agree to lift the stop work order until we come up with some sort of a mediated settlement, which is what we had to do with that one? And everything was gone on that one, right down to the ground. So we can't be, let's shoot the target over there, let's shoot the target over there, let's not do anything about this, so everybody else can get away with it because they'll just get a smack on the wrist. This is sort of Armageddon for us, the stakes in the sand here, because now we're aware that it's been going on for years with no one saying anything. Well, that's going to stop. So now we've got safeguards in place for ourselves with benchmarks, thresholds, visits, photographs, all that stuff. But we still have to deal with what really brought the activity to the forefront, which is this one, because it was so publicly done, and you could look right in the front of the building and there's nothing left. And a corner post is demolition for us because the walls are, all the studs are gone, the roof's gone, that's demolition for us. But they needed a demolition permit. And that's what we have to decide. Do they need to come back in and apply for the demolition permit, pay a fine, and we all move on and you can keep going? Which we'll put it on the next available meeting, which is September 1st, to get it over with. Or do we just simply walk away, remove the stop work, the enforcement order,
No.
semantics? Or do we have to come up with something that, and it's not just simply newspaper approbation. Everybody's in the newspaper. I'm in the newspaper this week. Great soundbite on this stupid
You
thing.
sound great, though.
I mean, come on. We cannot just go walking away, and we can't just say, oh, well, they did it on this one, we won't do it again. That's crap. I gotta be honest with you. Because it's been going on for so long, and it's not Disney World, it's not fake fronts, and it's not fake rafters, and it's not a fake structure. It's an historic structure that disappeared, granted, one wall at a time. When they got into it, it was farther gone than anybody anticipated. That is a problem for this board, but we can't just walk away and say, oh, sorry.
No, I don't think we should walk away. I think we should make a rule and have them, I don't know what our council says about establishing a rule that may be a little broad to begin with and put this house through it, but I think we have to answer the questions of this house because it'll at least get the new rules out to.
We have to have
people.
a organizational meeting on that, and George would probably have to come down on that. But right now, we have to deal with how we want to deal with rectifying, so they can keep going. Because there's no point in not keeping going, and we don't have jurisdiction over what you want to do inside. So we're not involved with stopping them from going on the inside, because we don't have any jurisdiction over the plumbing, the wiring, the drywall, any of that stuff.
And for all intents and purposes, with the few exceptions that you mentioned about 2 windows and this and that, the exterior of this thing, as far as I know, is pretty much buttoned up.
It's pretty much buttoned up.
Okay,
The things that,
so-
the things that need to be done, I mentioned
Fine.
before.
So, stop work is really going to accomplish nothing. I would be in favor of removing the enforcement, what do we call it, enforcement, or?
Yeah, I should help you frame the issue on that.
I'm not willing to do that.
In terms of, before you try to do anything, just to frame the issue for you is, I made it clear in correspondence to Attorney Tillotson that it appeared to me that the main issue was a demolition without being approved.
Correct.
And that that I have no authority to rescind the letter that had been issued, but that it doesn't pertain to any further work on the exterior that had been approved by the certificate of appropriateness.
Correct.
So I don't know why the builder's council or whoever it is telling them not to finish approved work,
They're doing it out of deference to the board.
but they're not, because I made clear that I represent the HTC,
Yeah.
that the enforcement order went to the issues that were addressed in there. To the extent that there is work to be done on the exterior of the premises that has been approved,
Right.
that that the order does not pertain to that. And if they had any question, they could come to the HDC, talk to the administrator, and
Okay.
clear that beforehand.
Understood.
The issue
But-
we have,
so-
the one caveat we do have, and you and I have talked about this, they will never get a CO. That's
But
our
just to
leverage.
frame the issue, to complete the thought on this is, so you have that outstanding order, and they're seeking a more formal resolution, a withdrawal of it. Now, I don't recommend that you withdraw it because you didn't have the authority to issue it. The fact that you use strong language demanding that they cease and desist violations, I think is entirely appropriate. If you have a demolition going on that is not approved, you want strong language going out saying, stop doing that and come in and resolve this issue.
But the
But if you end up that you have reached a resolution with the property owner, then you do want to reach a final resolution of that outstanding order, that you say, for XYZ reasons, we agree that that is hereby withdrawn, or you have agreed XYZ, in response to which we are withdrawing the order.
But only with a resolution first, which we do not have.
And so, to frame this issue for you, while the history is interesting, it looks like what you're talking about is an unauthorized demolition. And
Yes.
what do you want the remedy to be for that? Can you reach a resolution by agreement with the property owner? In which case, fine and dandy, then you can withdraw that order on substantive grounds, that this enforcement issue has been resolved by XYZ reasons, it is hereby withdrawn.
And how to resolve it was our suggestion, is that they apply for the demo, using all the reasons and whatever, if they took pictures, that's great, using all the reasons why they think they did that. And we would have to then wrestle with granting a de facto demolition permit for those three walls, the roof,
Yeah.
basically the structure. Show us exactly on, a stud plan, which pieces are still in there, so we have that documented for the file, what's left, where they put them back, because they obviously went away and came back. He said he put some purlins back up there. We're not taking any public comment yet, David.
Linda, one thing that I have to emphasize.
The fine has to be assessed.
One thing that I have to emphasize too as your counsel, and I'm here today in person, is you've got to take these one application and one property at a time.
Right.
Whether or not this is an issue across the island, whether it's been a problem in the past, whether or not it will create precedent, you take them one at a time. And so you have one distinct set of issues in front of you. I recommend that whatever resolution you try to reach be based on that application.
After the fact, we'll have an organizational meeting at some point in the fall. We'll have question and answer with George again. We'll try to establish a better policy so this does not continue to be allowed elsewhere. And people are put on notice that they can't do this, because if we find it, they're going to be unfortunately put through what David's been put through with his property, because he just wants to get it up, done, and out.
Well, may I actually respond to something George said, which is, I'm sorry, Mr. Ritchie. I understand what you're saying about needing a resolution. However, and with all due respect, I understand why Scott's counsel advised him not to work on the project anymore, whether it's out of deference to the board or out of fear of the board, or in the fact that he has to be on the island. And it would not be, with all due respect, I've represented boards and commissions before too, and sadly, they do not always take my advice, despite the fact.
We're no different.
Despite the fact that I would like to think that they might. So I would like to ask that regardless of what the outcome is, whether it's a fine, whether it's apply for a demolition permit, which in my mind, the demolition has happened. Applying for a permit, nunc pro tunc doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but obviously that's a discussion you can have and will. But I would at least like to ask for a withdrawal or to have it very clear on the record that we can go forward with completion of the project, because there is nothing left. Most of the work on the exterior is on the rear L. There are a couple of small dormer windows at the top, few shingles. Most of the front porch needs to be put in, the back porch built. And I would like the contractor to feel comfortable doing all of those things. If you withdraw it and then issue a more specific direction, I don't have a problem with that. But obviously my contractor is having a very tough time with this right now. Whether he should or he shouldn't, he is.
I don't think we should, I think we should follow advice of counsel and not withdraw it. However, we could have an agreement, a stipulated agreement, allowing, because that was basically the basis.
Take a vote on.
That's the basis of your first letter, was we want to do X, Y, and Z. You had a list of stuff they wanted to do, some of which they kept doing after the letter, just so you know.
No, but
Just-
she was clear on that.
But they just, no, there are other things, but that would be a very specific list, because that was something we approved to
Yes.
begin with.
We approved
We'd
that.
allow that to continue on, but if there isn't a resolution, the COA, the CO for that house will not be, he will be directed not to sign off on that, so he will not have a CO, regardless of what the other department does. He will not have a sign off from the HDC. That is the leverage we still maintain, regardless of whether it's lifted or not lifted, or they continue to work with a stipulated agreement, basically based on your first letter.
Well, that gets us back here, but my question now is.
What's the resolution, ultimate
Well,
resolution?
that, but also, is there anything with respect to the construction that is now an issue?
Not with what you've done so far, except for the demolition. It does look like the plan.
Yeah, that's the irony. I mean,
Well, and so there's nothing, all I'm saying is maybe, we should just, I would appreciate a vote, an agreement that we can go forward to complete the house.
As originally approved, as far as the architectural features.
Yeah, because it's all.
Maintaining the cease and desist, maintaining the control over the sign-off with the CO,
But I'm not sure what is being ceased
Ceased
or
or
desisted from.
yeah, if we're granting exceptions to the exterior.
Well,
we
he
have-
said, don't do it until we have a
No,
resolution
No,
set
I'm
up.
just saying,
this-
don't formally
David,
withdraw
I
that
don't know
you
if we can
raised
take public
outstanding
comment.
enforcement issues, but you can,
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I first raised my hand almost 2 hours
I know, but the
ago.
problem is, can we take public comment?
yeah, but can I just
We just
say,
need to
though,
finish this part of it here.
it's perfectly reasonable to, if you want to honor the request, which I think is reasonable, if you want to take a vote on, clearing additional work to go forward and to completion, if that makes the contractor feel better, I don't see a reason why you
But we
wouldn't do
don't have
that.
to lift the C and D.
Yeah, there's no reason to.
And we have to come up with an ultimate resolution, which is making, I think, everybody here would be more comfortable for just the paper chase, to have it come back in for the demolition, so we can put all the reasons why they did it actually in the file. So if it comes up again with somebody else, we did da-da-da-da-da, I said, do you understand what we had to do here? And then we agree on a fine amount, because we know it was all gone on May 15th. Because I was there, I have the pictures, there was no question. And whether we do the 300, we've talked about this, whether it's the 300 a day since May 15th until September 1st, if that's when you want to make the application, or September 8th, whichever. Then we do $300 a day, which is probably around about 12,000, which is half of what the other guy did. I mean, that would give us a basis, because we can charge up to $300 a day for a violation, as long as the violation exists before you get the COA for the demo. Is that something we can
Can I
deal
just,
with?
I do recommend that you let David speak for the record, but I should say, if you're talking, you you're paying for a lot of people to be here today, and it's your time too.
Yeah.
Can you
hates
reach,
Thursdays.
can you reach an entire resolution today? In other words, Diane, do you have the ability to agree to a fine and say, we agree to
Make
this
application.
fine, we agree to make the application for the after-the-fact approval, and the commission hereby withdraws the enforcement order in
I
exchange
think
for
you
that.
have to go
Is
back
that
and talk to those
necessary?
guys.
Well, I,
To get what she
Well,
has
she has
asked?
to ask. she
No,
has to
no,
talk to
you
her.
could take it one step at a time, but, you
yeah,
know.
let me make a quick email correspondence. I perhaps can get that authority.
All right, we'll put this on hold for a second. We'll listen to David
Yeah.
first.
Well, yeah, I would
Yeah.
think we should. You should, I'm sorry.
I think there are a couple of points here. I agree with Attorney Pucci that you need to decide this on the basis of this case.
David, identify yourself,
David Barham,
public citizen.
public citizen.
And member of-
Massachusetts
and member of
HDC,
HSAB.
Member of the Historic Structures Advisory Board. The seriousness with which you treat the matter, though, is clearly dependent on the public impact that it has on the cultural and historic research, and that does resource, and that does involve other buildings. If what you propose to do here is to essentially ratify a demolition after the fact for $12,000, $20,000, you put a price tag on virtually every historic building on the island. And in this particular case, there was a very real and significant financial benefit that accrued to this owner, whether intentional or not, by having not declared this to be a demolition at the outset and having to have gone through the process either of getting permission to build a building that exceeded the zoning envelope, so on and so forth, or build on a non-conforming site a much smaller building. Now, when you're working on one of the most conspicuously dilapidated buildings in the historic district, and as an experienced designer, experienced builder, and experienced owner working on the island, you do not make an effort to ascertain whether or not the building is structurally sound. I would say you have either a conspicuous failure to exercise due diligence on the part of all three, any one of which would be extraordinary, or you have a plan to avoid having to declare that the building needs to be demolished so that you can build a new building of the same size which would not otherwise be permitted. And this particular example aside, there are many examples of historic structures on this island where it would be far cheaper to knock the thing down and pay a $10,000 or $20,000 fine and rebuild it from scratch.
That's what we're
You
going
need, when you consider how you approach a resolution to this, to come up with a solution which will actively deter people from demolishing in the future, not set the bar so low that you actively encourage them to continue demolishing going forward. It's a very serious matter. What you do here will have some precedent and does have an impact on public policy. I use precedent not in the legal case sense, but in terms of how the island building community considers how old buildings are valued and whether or not they're going to be preserved. This is a multi-million-dollar project. $20,000, I'm sorry, is a rounding error. The attorney's fees have probably already exceeded that number.
Not quite.
Get there.
Or
Could get there.
combined,
Yeah, it'll
perhaps.
It'll get there.
So what we have here is an applicant coming in saying, without any offered evidence, hey, it was so rotted we had to demolish it. Essentially, take my word for it. That's not a basis on which this board ought to operate. There ought to be a severe penalty for demolishing and coming in and saying, you're going to have to take my word for it afterwards. And that's something that applies to this case specifically. So it may make sense to approach a solution which allows the work to go forward. But I think you need to think very seriously about what the dollar value of this project is on the whole, and what the deterrent value of the fine that you place is going to be on this project and on future projects. Because we fine people in part because of deterrent value. And I really hope that we don't settle this for $10,000 or $20,000, because most of the projects that come before you with old houses would benefit from doing wholesale demolition and writing a check. Thank you very much.
I've got to chime in there also. This has actually been conversations I've had with builders. It's much easier to tear something down and start over.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's no question.
It's a financial.
But that is
gain.
not what happened here. I
In
just,
general,
I respectfully disagree. That is not what happened here.
But Diane, in general, we've also had the conversation with builders over the years where we'll just do it and pay the little fine because the job is worth $4 or $5 million, and we've got a lot of people making field changes, things like that, because what the hell, we'll pay 10 times for a normal thing for the HDC is 10 times the $25 to come in for the revision. We'll just come in and pay the $250 on a $10 million project because we don't care. We want to keep building. So we've had a lot of discussions, and I've had discussions in the field with people, 12,000, 20,000, whatever, because to them, it's, here's my gold fixtures for my bathroom. So we have had what's going to deter them, what's going to make them a little bit more cautious about doing this one wall at a time thing, aside from a policy change that this doesn't keep going on without being said to us. This is so that I do agree with David, which has always been my original take on this. How do we resolve this so people coming in after this don't do it again? Whatever the reasons are, they took the walls down. We don't have the engineers, we don't have the pictures, and most people are coming in with engineers' reports, pictures, surveyor reports. We're getting a lot of those things in the files now, toxicology reports from the mold, things like that. So we're getting all that stuff in because we asked for it, but in this case, he didn't mention anything that the walls would be coming down, so it was clueless, and they should have stopped on the west wall and come in. But I don't think they'll either one of them do it again. The problem is, how do we resolve this issue? I don't have a problem with letting them continue the work that we approved. I have a problem removing the order, and we have to come up with some resolution, which I think is going to take you longer than an email, to have this discussion about where we're headed.
I
Yeah.
don't think that we should finish it up. I think we should
Have you
make a
have the
motion.
discussion with them?
Well, yeah, I haven't heard back from him.
Is
It
it
takes me a while
okay
to
if
type.
Hey, Lynn.
Finish?
Yeah.
I think we should make a motion to allow them to do the work that needs to be done to finish the exterior, because as far as I can see, it is work we have already approved. So continue with that, but state that any other legal document that is in place will remain until a suitable result has been accomplished.
Yeah.
That gives you time to talk to your people, gives us time to come up with the precise wording that we need to do that. And that allows an answer for you and for us.
Are we all in agreement that coming back for the after-the-fact demolition is necessary so we can get the necessary information in the file?
I think just as a matter of
Of paperwork, we have to
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the resolution, is to make reapplication, we'll just throw the chimney on there, reapplication to the HDC about that, because we have no paperwork on the chimney. We haven't signed anything that has the chimney on it.
It
We
has,
have to
well,
sign
it has, it does show on the plan
The
that's
stamp is
approved.
one thing, but we sign the COA, and the COA doesn't reference it, so simply reconstruct the chimney, move it over 6 feet, and use the old water struck brick.
But
So
you
that's
do
the
review
stuff
the
we need.
plans when
We
you,
do, but we sign the COA. We don't stamp the plans, we sign the COA, and we don't look at the floor plans unless there's a problem with with the depth. So those aren't stamped. So part of the resolution is to make reapplication to us for this. Obviously, it's at de facto. Then you have to find out from your clients about the fine. Because I do agree with David, how do we calculate the fine? George and I have gone round and round and round about that. Do we agree on an amount like we did with the guy on Center Street, which is a little bit more egregious? Or run it back to the $300 a day, which was what, about 12 grand, somewhere in there, I think.
Which is all the statute allows. I mean,
It
yeah.
does,
I think-
but
I
the
think
guy
what you
couldn't get a
should
CO.
Try to do is
That's
take
how
it
we
one
held
step,
him up.
take it one step at a time, maybe try to get the vote that would
Yeah.
satisfy them
Yeah.
to complete their work.
Yeah.
And then we can hear from Attorney Tillotson
You guys can
in the
have a
meantime
discussion.
after about what they'd be willing to
Okay.
pay
Right.
Yeah.
without contesting it.
Because we did that, we held up his CO on the Center Street until we had a resolution on the fine.
And then you
That's how
can
we
reach
got to that
your
amount.
resolution at the application on the demo.
Correct.
At another
Yeah.
time, let's
Yeah.
just get the,
Yeah,
All right.
can I ask then that whatever vote is taken, I understand you don't want to withdraw
Right.
the cease and desist, but can I ask that it at least be modified to the extent that we be allowed to,
that's what we're
Yeah.
going to
Complete
do now.
construction.
We have to come up with a document to,
correct?
we can take the vote, but then he has to draft something, correct?
So we can take,
The vote isn't enough?
isn't the vote
Well, I
enough?
think she's gonna be more, they're gonna be more comfortable with something in writing, given that the original C and D is in writing.
I would
correct?
be comfortable with a letter on George's stationery, just saying that at the meeting today, the vote was taken,
Right, to allow
so
X, Y,
forth.
and Z, and you've
Yeah.
already spelled out X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and again, I would just again ask that it include language that the cease and desist is modified
Yeah.
to the extent of the vote.
Is that somebody's motion?
Yes, my motion,
Okay, Diane's made a motion to allow the modification of the original enforcement letter, to allow the applicant to finish basically what's on your list, Diane. You have that letter of what's on the original list of what you wanted to finish.
Well, I would ask for all the work, because I don't think there's anything that you have an issue
Could you
with.
just send me an email with a laundry list or?
Yeah, and that, just to clarify too, that there's no interior.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, and that would, hang on one second, on this motion, that we include in there per the HDC COA approval, whatever the number was, and I think there was one modification after that, maybe,
There was a small modification that had to
modification
do, I think, with
on the
that.
east side somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so long as we just, in per the previous approval, so it's not sort of a carte blanche to keep going and do something that's not in keeping, and then we don't want to go there. Is that,
Could you read
all the
back
exterior,
the basics of it, of what you think recommend?
Well, the
Well,
motion
Diane's
would be,
made a
the
motion.
motion would be to modify the cease and desist letter to allow certain specified work to proceed to completion of the property.
the approved exterior work.
right, under COAs, X and Y.
Yeah.
I don't have
If it's the
that.
approved exterior work, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
it's already done in your list from what your letter stated.
And so,
It's already approved.
yeah, they just want to finish what was already approved, so that's Diane's motion. Is there any other discussion on Diane's motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was a unanimous vote. And then I'll leave it up to you guys to have more, you talk to your clients and find out what kind of resolution, but just know that the sentiment of the board is that it will be an application to get all the information in as to how it happened and what happened into the file on a legal, technical basis for us, and then we issue the COA. And then we gotta come up with a resolution on the fine issue. So you guys have a conversation, but know that the $300 a day, and then we did have a resolution on the other one because we went back and forth for like 6 weeks and ended up with that figure. It was a lot higher. It was $100,000 to begin with. And then we kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and we ended up at that figure on that situation.
Yeah, I need to know about the legal aspect of all that.
I know.
Madam Chair,
It's
really
dubious.
quick, before, may I ask Mr. Pucci if what I have written down
Yeah,
is correct? Okay, I'm gonna read it to you, make sure I got it. Motion to allow modification of the original cease and desist letter.
a dues enforcement letter, is that what you want?
Whatever, no,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right,
Does it matter?
No.
Enforcement,
Okay.
C and D,
Yep.
cease and desist, letter to permit certain specified work to proceed to completion.
In-
HDC.
in compliance with the two
Yeah,
COAs.
twos, and reference the two certificate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would ask for all work on those COAs, that all work that was approved on the COAs.
Take the word specified out, Terry.
And certain.
Specified work to,
Take the word specified out.
okay.
'Cause
Letter
it's-
to permit work to proceed proceed, all work
Yeah, on the
all
exterior,
work to
exterior.
proceed to completion per the HDC approvals.
Yeah, insert the word exterior though, because that's all we have
I
jurisdiction over.
was gonna ask about that.
Yeah, exterior.
Exterior, work to proceed to completion per the HDC approvals. One or two?
There are
Two.
two. I didn't get the second number. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
I'm not sure that I even have the second number. It was a very, very small modification, and I don't even know if it got a number, but,
It did get a number, but it was like within a month after that. It was like really quickly.
okay.
Okay, I just wanna make sure it's worded to everybody's,
And then you guys start having a
Satisfaction.
conversation about the rest of it. And just let me
And
know
and
when
can
the-
somebody get me
the
those
application.
so I can identify them or the numbers or?
Yeah. John, do you
shoot
have
it
the
to me by
file here?
email?
Oh, actually, I can get the numbers out of the file.
Or at some point after, you know, you could just email.
It's
it
right
to me.
here.
we used to write them out on the cover.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was just a fence, I think. It was the railing back there. So basically, it's 61829,
61829, and
and the fence was just a hardscaping issue. So it's 61829 is the one that allowed what we just did.
the other one is
Comment, if I go.
Okay, so that was unanimous, John.
You don't have the other number?
There wasn't one, it was just a fence. George, it was hardscaping.
So I have per HDC approval, COA 61829.
Yeah.
Mr. Pucci, I believe you know the past that happened with a court order. We had a court order at one time from Superior
Attorney General?
Superior
Court judge.
And he said that the HDC has only one obligation, that's to judge from exterior architectural features. That was from the foundation, the sidewall, which is shingles, the windows, the roof, and the chimney. And well, air conditioners and other stuff, but the main structure, that we have to rule on. But somebody asked me, John, if that's the outside exterior architectural features, which they are, how can you rule whether the guy takes it inside down or not? And I wouldn't know how to answer that. How could you?
It is difficult to answer that.
It's not the
You
inside.
can't-
He doesn't get it.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, that's the point, is that, that's what Linda's talking about Disneyland, is that you can't just get the approval and build something that looks exactly the same. If it was a demolition of that exterior feature, then you have to apply for that.
Right,
If it's just, if it's a modification with certain materials, you have to apply for that.
right. And if you're saying that we can't go inside the building and
No.
all the timbers are inside.
No.
No,
But that's
we
the
are-
structure we do have
we do
jurisdiction
have-
over. The structure.
the structure, we do have control.
You can't just take it down to the ground.
Yes, and you can
We have-
also.
we have the structure.
Right, and you can also prevent the demolition by
He never
neglect,
mentioned-
that's where you
Yeah.
can get into the interior.
Right.
Mr. Pucci said never mentioned it. He just said the sidewall is the outside of the wall.
Yes.
No.
Well, everything
No.
else on the inside, you know, you just, I couldn't answer that question if somebody had asked me.
The structure, John, just say structure. We have jurisdiction over the structure. If the structure disappears, under the act, which I have right here, we have jurisdiction over RAZING.
Okay, this exhibit D, did you write this? Exhibit D?
I don't know what it is.
What's Exhibit D?
Does it
This
have my
goes
name
out
on
of,
it?
This was the thing you put.
you just gotta
No,
have,
it's
you
not.
had this.
I don't have anything.
Look, handed to us.
I don't have that.
This is all part of, let me see.
I don't have anything that's
Oh,
marked
John.
Exhibit. I don't know what that is, John. Is that yours,
That's,
Diane?
What?
That's yours. That's hers, John. That's not yours.
Oh, that,
That's yours, Diane.
Yeah,
Take it
that is
back.
mine.
John, that belongs to
You're
her.
welcome.
Yeah,
yeah,
nobody,
John.
no, but this isn't my copy.
That's not my copy.
No, this is something, this is something
nobody
else.
else has that.
That's
Nobody
mine.
has that, John.
Well, this is pertaining to,
Limited.
the whole situation, right? I'm trying, let me go here to this page. This my question.
That's
John.
my letter.
Okay, all right, this is all
Did you,
written
oh,
here.
you're Exhibit D. You
All
did
this stuff,
exhibits.
yeah, is this all yours?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, Exhibit D. Now this one,
that was something that the chair wrote, but I attached it.
You already have it, John. You have the
Yeah.
copy I gave you. She just attached it to her letter.
I've had this for quite a while.
Yeah, so we've all had that.
My one other comment, I have to go, I'm sorry, but I have to depart.
Dan, I assume your eyeglass appointment's been changed.
Yeah.
Right here.
I assume?
An hour ago.
Okay.
Did you want to hear from David? Because I.
David.
Yes. He's still going.
Yeah, while he looks at that.
David?
A question both to the board and to the town attorney. I hear the chair inviting counsel for the applicant to bring forward a suggestion as to how to resolve this. But I want to remind you all that the applicant's goals in reaching a resolution for as little as possible are not the same as your own. And I wonder whether or not it doesn't make sense for you all to meet in executive session, perhaps with counsel, and to discuss what the implications of this case are and how you want to value it in a way that is appropriate to this case and appropriate to the goals of the board. The fact that there was a case settled a decade ago for some sum of money, A, the value of money has changed in the decade. B, the amount of that settlement was obviously not sufficient to deter a string of demolitions since then. I think it would do the board well to have a conversation among themselves as to how they need to value this kind of event to make sure it doesn't happen again, and come to the table with their own proposal, not just put it in the hands of the applicant.
Yeah, we agree with that, David.
Put it just.
We just want them to have a
Yes.
conversation, because she has to go back to talk to her
Sure.
owner to see
Understand.
where it's going.
Understand, but
And just so you know, $300 a day for 120 days by the time this is resolved is $36,000.
I'm sorry, but on projects on this island, that's peanuts. And it's not enough to deter somebody from doing this again. It just is.
It's not peanuts because it's probably not the owner that's going to be on the hook for this. It's probably going to be other people that it is going to hurt and they won't do it again.
It's a multi-million-dollar project.
I know that, David. We went
Very
through this
grand.
at Center Street and they said 100,000 would never, and George and I have talked about that, 100,000 would never get supported by the court, so, which is why we had a mediated settlement as to what was reasonable and what we could base on something that was reasonable, because that project was
A,
stopped.
that was a decade ago. B, I think you should take the advice of counsel afresh.
But these guys are going
Because
to have
things
that.
have changed since then.
Right, and she's got to talk to her people. They got to talk back and forth about this. We do know the component that has to be reapplied. And then come up with something that we can actually stick to.
Yep.
Okay, that's what's going to be. We're going to have to go someplace that we think, if it was litigated, it would get supported by the court.
Yeah.
And there is precedent on this stuff.
I
Yeah.
have one closing comment, all right? In this
Is it back to
proposed
yours
minutes
again?
of July 23rd,
John,
Yes.
July 23rd minutes are not on the table. They've been barred.
Uh,
They have been barred from being on the
wait a minute,
table.
let me finish.
They
I'm
will
gonna make a
not.
comment for Mr.
The
Fucci.
July 23rd minutes have been removed.
Okay,
They are not up for discussion here. They have been removed for a very legal reason. They have been removed. They are not on the table and not up for discussion. They're going to be rectified.
I am going to make a comment on Mr. Fucci, something that was said. He said it, I didn't.
He wasn't, what did you say?
He was on the phone.
He was
That
on the phone.
That was a telephone
Right,
conversation.
on the
Correct.
I just want to give an accurate was needed. Right. Mr. Fucci, you stated that you have dealt with Ms. Tillerson and she's a very good attorney. I have 45 years on this board, I've never heard.
I never said that, Diane, though.
That's why we're getting all this adjusted.
I gotta go, but I've never heard an attorney say something nice about another attorney that nice, you know? So, thank you.
You hear it all the time.
Regardless of the other issues, Attorney Tillerson is a well-recognized ladies attorney by the record.
And I appreciate the way this has been handled today. I appreciate you coming. And we have some work to do, I guess. But just when you guys are ready to come in, just let me know.
Yep.
And we'll put it on that agenda.
Yeah, that's fine, and I just want to make it clear, I understand your position very clearly, but, from our perspective, we would still, we will go through
Deal with
that
it, yeah.
process, because I think that's going to be part of the resolution, but it's without prejudice to our, contention that this is still not a demolition, as we see a demolition.
Well, we understand that. That's
But
the
I
reason we
understand,
have to-
I understand your position.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody in the room, for your patience.
Did we vote on?
Yes, we did.
We did.
Thank you, George. Run to the airport. Diane, do you need it? Wait, guys, listen.
No,
do you
I'm
need a
all
ride?
set, I'm all set, thank you.
I don't want them going if leaving you here.
Thank you.
don't know how many flights they have up there.
Bye, John.
I'm gonna take the boat back,
Are
actually.
you driving back up?
I'm gonna,
Oh, you're,
I'm gonna grab, somebody's gonna come and pick me up and take me into.
well, they can do that.
Yeah, that's okay. I can, well, maybe, I'll see if I can catch up.
Yeah.
I thought I'd ask you, were you in any relation to Ken or Ted? No.
Ted, no.
Ted, no.
Ted was a very close friend of mine.
We were,
No, that's.
They worked
This guy
together.
was not anything down here, he was a psychiatrist in Boston.
oh, that is actually Ted's
Ted's brother?
father or father-in-law, perhaps. But no, I'm not. But thank you. I know the family.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let her go.
Here, Ted.
She's gotta catch up to him.
He was
God
out
rest his
playing.
soul.
They've got like multiple people out there in multiple cars.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
So everybody else is approved, right?
more than likely.
Oh, John,
Nantucket Public Schools,
there was a letter submitted.
yeah, we have the letter. Everybody got the letter by email.
Yeah.
Representing the applicant at the moment, all by himself today, without the posse. Michael Kozart from the school. Did everybody get one? They're all down there, Val. You gotta throw them down.
Thank you.
And you got this, I sent it to you.
I did see it, thank you.
This is wood, right?
And stained cedar.
Now, one of the complaints I did hear from somebody who just randomly went up there to play basketball, is that this is gonna be basically summer. Because in the wintertime or the fall, once school starts, we go back to watch the games, we drive
Yep.
back there all the time, it's got to be open. And the kids coming back from lunch, they've got to be able to get in and out, teachers have to get in and out. So this is basically,
Basically in the summer, we have Michael Kozork, Superintendent of Schools, for the record. We have probably 250 campers in the summer. We have another 75 to 100 students, summer school students, special ed, ELL, and to have the pass-through in the summer is a problem. Someone asked me if
that's not what's wrong.
we would always have it closed throughout the year, and I hesitated to say never, but rarely. There might be something for which we would want to close it, but I can't imagine, because during the school year, everybody needs access. So the first two were just horizontal.
That one.
Yep. And that is the one, that one was on,
Is everybody sitting on this, John?
Yeah.
that one was on Cliff Road, and then there was another, the white one there that you're looking at was Cliff Road, and then the other one was Nobadir.
This is a little too overdone.
It's too opaque.
I think the one.
This one is the best.
The least amount of.
Who's sitting on this, John? Do we have everybody? Okay, right. This one, it's sort of, it's more, you can see through it, it's simple, it's
That's
light.
what I was gonna say, it was 3 bars.
This one.
Yeah.
And then the posts don't go up that high, and it's a fairly low key. Nobody's gonna drive through this.
Sure.
And the
Lower
school's-
posts.
The school's not white.
Val,
No,
The school is gray?
we're looking at this guy.
it's all natural. The
Yeah.
Yep.
This one would be the color of the school trim, which is,
It's a natural,
It's a stain, isn't it?
so I don't think it's even stained. I think it's untreated.
Really?
it's either natural or gray, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Proposing natural.
I would have
This
it
is natural.
And I think that's what was proposed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody, and then the fence, because this isn't as wide as that, the fence that goes from there to the school, did you really want to, do you really need, it needs to sort of run into something. What's it running in over here, the bushes?
Right now, they have metal posts
Oh,
set
wow.
up, but we can put up wooden posts if you prefer.
But what would be on this side? Isn't the bushes right there?
Yeah, you can't drive through on the right side.
And so this is to keep people from driving through?
Right.
Even the
But
kids-
I'm not
the
sure-
kids walk- I wouldn't do that.
I'm not sure that I
Up
would
and down there
go
all the
that
time.
far. I agree with you.
All right, this wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Because it's not wide enough to get a car through, they gotta go over
Yeah.
the damn curb.
And the
Plus, the
posts
kids
should
need to be able to
be,
walk back and forth
Yeah.
when this is closed.
So
Sure.
freestanding.
Yeah, 'cause
And you
otherwise
want
they can't
the,
get through there.
and you want the posts even with the,
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
what
to
height?
each other,
At what
yeah,
height?
Like this fence in the
4
picture.
What is this, 4 feet? 4 feet? 4.5, 5? I think the posts are 5.
Yeah.
Whatever this
4
is.
feet.
Yeah,
So
whatever
keep the
that is.
posts at the same level as
Yeah.
the rest of the fence.
And just copy that white fence.
Yeah, just copy this one, make it the same color as the trim on the school, and take away the piece on the left. So it's just the fence
Yes, just the fence.
for now, and then we can deal with people issue if there's a problem.
Okay.
All right, so what it is, this is the fence. I'll give you the map, Exhibit A. So we want to make that motion that it's Exhibit A,
I will.
trim. It's to match
Natural. Yeah.
trim on that building. If it's gray, it's gray. And buildings.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Is
Aye.
that gray or natural weather?
It's whatever the trim on the school is, so it's just to match the trim on the school.
School.
School trim.
Yeah, and the posts are 4 feet high.
And which one of these?
It's this one, I'm gonna send it down.
Okay,
It's
so
that one.
It's not a drawing, it's
Not a
just a
drawing.
picture.
so it's
So here comes Exhibit A, somebody.
the
I don't have my usual Abby.
three red.
Yep, so it matches that picture. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that was Diane's motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I think that was the last remaining
Yes,
of the application. Thank
Yep.
you.
thank you very much.
This was an education. I don't envy you. No, I really.
What, you're not gonna run for HDC?
I'm a superintendent of schools, I'm an educator, and I have been educated. Bless you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, he called me. I just couldn't take the, Ben, I just couldn't take the call.
So what are we doing next?
Hold on a second.
Whoever's here, I'd say.
No, we have to get rid of this. We can't have two running at the same time. That's the problem.
What happened to Diane?
And he has to withdraw this one. No, they just left her. Yo, you have to do something here. We cannot have them running at the same time. You were supposed to come in and withdraw the original one on Ryan. Well, it's holding us up here.
Do you want this?
Because we still have the new one in here, and we can't approve the new one unless the other one's withdrawn. John, do you have the old one there?
Yeah. the
Can you
old-
come up to the meeting right now?
I don't have the old, I have the new.
No, where's the old one?
It's in, yeah, it's over
Where though? Over there?
it.
Is it back in the
Should be
file room?
filed. Yeah, yeah.
You need to go over there right now to the main building and withdraw it, and then bring the file over here to us. And then we will approve this one. Okay? Yes, but you need to go get it now and bring it over here. We have the new file right here. Yes, we're gonna be here. Okay, all right, bye. He's gonna take care of it, and he's coming over here.
A few years ago, right? So it should be in the file.
Okay, so we're gonna pass up Michael Ryan. John Graff. We told her we'd wait till she got here. Kim, you gonna get up now? Find out where she is now. People just don't expect us to still be here.
Thanks.
Good job.
This is my old house. Going from where it's sitting in pieces. Are you coming? No, you need to come now. We just passed you. All right, bye. Bye. Everybody's been watching it with bated breath, apparently, on TV. And that's why she didn't come. There might be a delay. But this is my old house that was supposed to go here, become an office, with other things. This lot is being sold. Where's the lot that it's going?
19 Nancy Ann Lane.
We'll see is that the lot that's circled here? No, or is that where it's coming from?
It's coming
Right
off
now,
of,
it's sitting in the yard over there, right?
yeah,
So it's not
it's on
coming,
Fort
but the
Redwood.
front one is not the right lot. The front one is the lot where it's coming from.
Right. So we have.
We don't have a
to-
GIS with where it's going to.
That's the next application.
Okay.
Right, this is the move
But you're gonna
off.
wanna know, before you go move off, you're gonna wanna know where it's moving to, so you might as well throw that one out, because we only see them at the same time.
This is not the important one.
No, because it can go wherever you need it to go.
Do we have names for the record?
Kim Glowacki.
You can talk.
Kim Glowacki. Linda.
He's brain dead.
Linda, I have the packet that was submitted.
Yeah, but we need
No,
the
it's
other
just a
file.
separate thing. We were looking at
We
the
need,
move
we
off.
need to move it
Oh,
on.
you
It's
don't
not
have
really
it
an
here.
issue.
Coming.
It's the move
Oh, okay.
on where they need to know. What's
Okay.
gonna happen to it when it moves on? The same thing?
Yeah,
Kind of a
same
weird
plan,
house
different
over
lot.
there. Will it fit over there?
Yes.
What, it's going to Nancy Ann Lane,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Well, the
number?
corner,
Kim.
across from the pit.
Yes.
Catty corner of the
Nancy Ann,
pit.
19 Nancy Ann.
But we got lot numbers here, 165 down to 160. Is it,
You see, go to the second page.
168.
You see the
Right
pit?
here.
You see the pit? It's across from Walter's old office. Who's in there now?
Yep, I see it.
Nothing.
At the corner of
Dave, Kim, and Nancy Ann.
Is it gonna fit there?
Yeah,
Is it vacant now?
yes.
So all the stuff you see on the GIS is not there anymore?
No, that's correct.
It's all gone. So it's basically going up here on the corner?
Yeah, there is one small building. Here, you can
Back here.
take a look at that copy. There's one small little
Yeah.
structure there.
Approved.
Here. It's going right there on the
Yeah,
corner.
I see that.
How long is this building? How wide?
It's a big building. We were happy.
It's-
It looks like the housing and the apartment.
It's,
That's, I was looking at this thinking,
it's, the main body of the house is probably, it's an extended 7-bay. So the main body of the house where the front door is, Val, it's probably 60 feet.
yeah.
And the back L, where my bedroom was, is probably about 24 feet, if not longer.
Right.
So the reason I motioned to approve this is because
Gotta go somewhere.
this is actually a great-looking house, and I think it might actually sort of support the stuff that's, those apartment buildings.
Maybe they could put a roof walk on those.
It had a roof line.
No, she's talking about the new
new
ones.
building?
Oh, no,
To make them more appealing.
no.
Shutters.
Squeezing blood
No.
from a
There's
stone.
nothing out there with a roof line.
Okay, so this is approved. the
So,
move.
Ray made a motion to approve the move off and the move on. All those in favor?
Agree.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
Hey, all right. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Yep.
both were disapproved.
What, you just got antsy fans back there? Let's go. Didn't you get an education from all this?
No,
And will you ever remove a wall, either one of you?
I haven't yet.
You mean me too?
You two?
Oh, the fear.
Rob's back there.
I'm gonna remove a 2x4 like the vaccine.
Right,
Yeah.
I'll let everybody else know.
thank you.
You're gonna have to,
You gotta throw harder. Where are those muscles in those arms there?
Doesn't want to hurt anybody.
Just throw them.
Okay, so we hold this over for some little things, right?
Yep. The front porch.
Where am I going? Oh, front
Oh,
porch.
Brooke, you ever again?
Much better.
Front porch was just made into a just a lean-to style
Yep.
porch. It was gable. The window was removed.
Yep.
Pushed over.
Yeah, pushed over, and then the other north elevation, there were 3 windows. It's down to 2, and made to be as
People are
balanced as
folding.
it could.
Anybody else want to say anything? Oh, who's sitting on this? Wait a minute. Is everybody sitting on this?
yes.
Okay. All those in favor of Val's motion to approve?
Aye.
Thank you. Told you we'd start moving eventually. Hot Cuba?
Do you wanna take, these,
No, I don't want that, but I would have figured it out it was
Linda?
yours.
Do you wanna take these guys? Cause I'm here anyway, I will last.
Okay. Come on up. Julie, let's go.
You're afraid it might be too stiff.
You got an education though. All right, so we've gone back to
Yeah.
John Graff.
Yes.
Okay.
Julie Jordan for the
I don't want to
applicant.
move too fast for Terry, so we're going back and forth, back and forth.
Speak quick, you have 15 minutes and another meeting is in here.
Who's in here after that?
FinCom.
Okay.
They can
All right,
sit out in the
guys.
hall.
So I made all the changes. I made 2 separate applications for each lot. Number
We don't have
20.
anything in front of us.
Oh, right here. Here you go.
Except,
And
except
I
that
made-
you can't give us the second one. The second one has to come back on consent if we do this on the first. It's not
Oh.
2 applications on the.
Right, okay, that's
I
fine.
can only do one. We can only do the house one.
All right, well then give me
So
that
hold
one.
up, yeah, take this one away
Okay.
and just give us the house one.
Okay.
And everybody on there will just cross off the other one.
Because I couldn't contact my client, I just got rid of the outdoor shower.
It's technically, it is.
Thank you.
No, you've got to give us plans. Where's this? Why am I getting this?
She brought it.
I'm bringing, you told me to bring it with me.
And this is just the one lot.
Yeah, and I just put it all on the same
Okay,
page.
so
'cause it
everybody,
got
please
split.
mark up in the right-hand corner, 8/20/2015, and circle it. So when John gets to the office, he's got something to stamp here. Okay, so where did we go? What happened?
May I tell you what changes I made?
I love it when you put yellow on here.
Yeah, it's good.
So I
knows
set the
that.
arbor back as much as the side would allow, and I made the gate straight. And I removed the outdoor shower, and I added a type 2 enclosure around the AC unit.
How tall?
3.5.
Put 3.5 on it, guys.
Okay,
Put
great.
3.5 right next to the type 2. And put NTW right next to that.
Natural to weather, yeah.
Okay. And the arbor is white.
All the other ones on the street are, and the trim is white.
Okay. I just hadn't seen it painted, so I
Okay.
didn't know what color they put on it. And how tall is, hold on, how tall is this wall?
18 inches.
18 inches.
How does it die?
I'm gonna dye it into grade. It's gonna
Well,
just
that's what I'm saying. At both,
wrap
at
around.
the
because it
left-hand end, because this one's gonna be attached to the
gets-
other
on
one.
both sides, it's gonna dye into
On
grade.
both sides, put a mark on both sides of that wall saying it's dying. How do you spell dying?
DYING.
DYING.
Into grade, on both ends of that wall.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Because I assume it starts getting less and less as it goes along.
It does.
All right, that we have to put on here. So the highest point of the wall, I take it, is at the shed?
Yeah.
How
and
tall is
It's
that?
24 there, and then it's 8. It
All right.
kind of
So
dies.
at the
Mostly it's
shed,
18.
On both sides of the shed, put down 24 inches on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then run the arrow to the left and to the right.
I mean, I'm trying to make it as little as possible.
That's what we need to know. And the style of the stone?
Is the round, medium,
All right.
New England feel.
Yes, I know, but she showed us the wrong picture.
Yeah, it's a round, medium
So
New
up
England
on the
feel.
right-hand side where the wall is, right, medium, rounded field stone. We've had to do that with another one the other day. And I rate medium size, I guess.
Yeah, medium. You just don't want the small.
No. Okay, does somebody make a motion for the marked up plans dated 8/20/2015?
Right.
That's Diane's motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Now we're back down to Huckabee.
No.
Oh, you're going last. All right,
Yeah.
now we're down to Rob. Phil, did you fix those things that we talked about?
Did I do what?
Fix the door thing or whatever?
I didn't move the door because this is the second dwelling. And
Sort of, but I talked to Phil 2 days ago.
Come on.
Which one is
I
this?
talked to him this
Bill
morning.
Rob.
I'll give him the cost.
Which number?
Okay.
Number 1, new business.
And there was something weird about some window or something that needed to be fixed. Because he's not putting the other building in front of it for a while. If at all.
Well, that's not what he told me this morning, but
Yeah, I know,
anyway.
but that's
I
Phil.
can-
You know
let's-
Phil.
Let's see, yep, I do. So,
The reason why this didn't go to consent, guys, I did get Phil on the phone here. Also, the reason why this didn't go to consent is the back building. It's not facing the road, but a couple of those buildings over on those little roads do not face the road, they face the common drive. It is the back one. It is only 23 feet tall. The issue that I ran into with it, because the north side is what faces the road, was the size of that dormer and a lack of fenestration. That's what faces the road.
Can we get another window in there, Robert?
okay, since I can't find my copies. Yeah,
I
let's
don't
see how
think
it-
you're gonna see it because of the building in front of it.
He's not doing it now.
Oh.
Well,
right
that's not
now.
what he told me this morning.
But
But anyway,
you will
let's
see it.
Let's see how you feel about where the entry is. If we, if
Is
you
it
want us-
everybody okay with the entry on the
Yeah.
side? Okay.
Then yes, I can add another window.
Something up here.
Okay.
Because this is one monster dormer with nothing in it.
You know what I?
I know, what is up there, anyway?
What I'd like to do is move the entry over into here, push the kitchen back into here, and bring the porch across the yard side.
Somebody want to make a motion to hold for revisions?
Okay,
Because we like that,
we love that.
yeah.
If you want to approve this with one more window here,
No,
Phil
I
would
like
me to
what
do
you did, what you just said, because those are the problems I had with it.
Just created more work.
So somebody say it comes back on the first. It'll come back in, I'll just stick it on the first.
I'll do my best.
All right, somebody motion to hold for revisions.
Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
This makes
Rubenstein.
us all look cute over there.
Why can't I do that?
Rubenstein, I like what you just did. That's what I wanted when I talked to you on the
Man,
phone.
we'd like to see Phil.
Don't tell Phil, tell him we said it.
No, he shouldn't have told you he's not going to build one at home.
Hopefully he's not
Well,
watching.
you never know what he's gonna do. He
He's
said,
stupid
well, it
guy,
might
but-
be too much money, and I'm going, okay. Well, then we might have a few issues in the back house, Phil.
Okay.
The height was great.
No, we'll handle it. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It'll work better the other way.
I think it will. I think for a programmatic effort, it'll work better.
Yeah.
the other way. This was the only reason that this did not go to consent. One, only reason, it's a perfectly appropriate addition, you go to number page 2, is because of those windows, and it is visible from the pond, I went up there. Those windows do exist in varying forms on the structure, but on the side facing the pond, they only exist in that middle connector. So I thought it was a little too much for the right-hand little insignificant little piece. It's a great little piece, given the rest of this house, which just sort of rambles across the pond. But I had a question about those large casement windows that are only replicated on this side in that one little inset
And
section.
then double hung on the others, around
Yeah,
the
and everybody
corner,
else is double hung. So, and then they've got them on the second floor.
Yeah.
But these are longer than the second floor.
So.
If they weren't that long, Rob, if they were the size of the second floor and you cut off some of this, Rob, you cut off the bottom panes, it would work.
Well, you see, I've got some photos that show the rest of the building a little bit more than I delineated in the drawing.
Oh,
They
that was
have,
up
they
there.
have the same windows up on the second floor.
They're shorter.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
Look how tall they are. Those are like 7 feet tall.
But see these windows right here? Those are only 4 panes deep.
Yeah, but I'm down on the main form, down to the left. I mean, the building is 168 feet long. This is the driveway side. This is the pond side.
I'm not worried about
So they
anything
have
but the
these two
pond.
big flanking things on a double French door. They got 3 French doors down here, and these are the ones that I showed in the drawings that they would like to put, obviously, so they can view the pond.
They can't see the pond from 160 feet? So don't say that.
I don't know.
Ray, can I have the picture, please?
Well-
But don't say that.
No,
They've got 160 feet of, I can see the pond. I'm not worried about I can see the pond.
well,
I have no objections simply because there are numerous other examples on this building. And I can't imagine the HEC office phone is ringing.
But I think the reason why there's a problem here is that there's probably one too many of them. This is a tiny little thing.
That's their neighbor.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
That's their neighbor.
But,
So, how am I
Rick, the
gonna
point
explain
is, this is a very small tail. Adding onto the length, it should probably have one less, or be shorter, or be the shorter ones, not the longer ones.
What do you think, fellow commissioners? down
They're
there?
too long and too big for
What,
that.
they
It's actually,
going to ask us?
There are
yeah,
2 feet between.
it does
these and the-
exceed,
Yes, just
guys,
this once.
Greg, stop. It does exceed the 50% allowable fenestration, which is why I said, take the bottom row out, so they're 4 light instead of
Oh,
the
I
other
see.
ones.
You're just suggesting making them less
Shorter.
tall.
Yes.
Yeah, one,
Yeah,
That
that's
size.
fine.
one thing shorter.
So they're 4 down instead of 5 down, which
Just
match
like the other
those.
ones.
I think we should match the other ones on the house.
These,
The four
right there.
The 4
Oh, those are too small.
No, just take, these are, you got way too much glass here. It's over the allowable. I'm only
We'll match
asking,
these. These are what you're saying to match.
Let me see.
That's what we're going to match.
because they're right here on your drawing.
I'm there. We'll match the
No,
ones.
those are 5s.
But those are the ones that are there.
No, these are 4s.
I want at least one approval before.
But that's a photograph of that elevation. I didn't.
Are these smaller than those? Those are doors.
They look like
Those
they're
aren't
the same.
windows. No, those are.
Oh, jeez.
You see
Linda,
what I'm
this
saying?
that
That's
door is
not what
there.
you're showing me.
That door's there.
Yeah,
That
but
door's
that's
around
not
the corner.
that.
That door's around the corner. You can't see it in the
Can we
photograph.
make a
This has nothing
motion
to do with this building on that side.
Yes, it does. It's that elevation.
to approve with one less
What's
window?
that?
Shorter.
Shorter.
Show the window, there they are, right there.
One pane less in height.
Right.
Thanks.
Right. This
You
is
they
fine.
have,
We'll
you
go
have them
four.
right, you have them right there, unless you drew it wrong.
Here's
It's drawn wrong.
a motion on
Well,
They're 4D.
I couldn't draw a 168-foot building for a
I know.
20-foot addition.
This is wrong compared to your picture. That's what you're saying.
But here's the proof in the pudding.
Yeah,
This
but
is
that's
what's-
not, we're looking at that, so those go there, but that's not what you're showing us. You're showing us fives, not fours. So what are we doing? Taking a window out, or are we getting them shorter?
We're gonna go short.
One pane.
Shorter.
Val's motion is to go 4 panes high rather than 5.
Shorter and shorter windows, not just giving a bigger window the same size with 4
I'll make them the
panes.
same width, 4 high.
Right.
Okay?
Not that long,
No, I understand.
okay?
We're good.
That's Val's motion?
Yes.
Yes.
So they're shorter windows
I
with
have
4
to
panes.
leave.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Jeffrey Booms, you can look at it and say, sorry, so
No,
sad.
he's not, I was,
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
let's do
It's
it
not
now.
approvable.
Okay, so then
So
let's,
take a look at it, so we can get him off the table. I can't keep going, he hasn't been opened yet, and we're in violation.
no, hold on. Why don't we just say hold for representation? No?
You can't approve a stockade fence.
okay, so
Shall
it's
we
not
deny it?
approvable, let's not even look at it.
Well, deny the stockade fence.
Is that what he applied?
Yes, and we don't approve stockade fences. I can't tell if it's existing or if he's replacing or what. So make the motion to hold for representation.
Hold for representation
Val's made a round to hold for representation.
and clarification.
And I just want you to look for 2 seconds at Doble because you will reject it. I just have been going round and around with them for weeks, and it's got to be heard. We'll shut that thing off, Terry, and just give it to him.
Just leave it here, turn it off, leave it here, the FinCom needs it.
Okay. So it's not going to hurt you not to have it.
She's bumping out the front door. Is that what it is?
Have a look at it and tell me what you think. And then they're connecting the dormers with another dormer, which we don't allow. And this is completely, fully visible.
Okay.
Is
so
there anything on here that's architecturally appropriate,
Do we
guys?
want to disapprove this?
No,
Okay, then somebody make a motion to deny due to architecturally inappropriate.
so move.
Sorry.
All those in favor
Aye.
of the denial? Okay.
Okay,
All right, now we're
Val,
back up then.
These are gonna be fast, because
Hold on, what am I doing here with Old Harbor?
Old Harbor.
Oh, 4 lights tall,
Yeah.
shorter windows.
Which one are you?
Hakuba, Hakuba.
Hakuba?
Here comes somebody.
Where is it?
Where's the denial?
That's already
Oh,
signed.
we gotta sign that, right?
Yeah, John, did we get the denial? Before I forget.
Is that one stone post?
Yeah. I
I-
argued with her for weeks. No,
I
no,
can hold
nothing.
Nielsen, I don't need to do that today. The pool, it can go
Okay.
to the first. This one, Akuba, I'd really like, and if we get to the other
Don't we
one,
have to get to Rose?
it would be good, but
Because they gotta get going before because they're gonna have to go through the lot
I
in
know.
order to build it, and
I
they wanna
know.
take Cumbies down. All right, where are we?
this is 130 Surfside Road.
Who's on this though? John, do you have the minutes?
I do. Williams, Coombs, Pole, Camp,
All
Glazer.
right, so it's just the 3 of us. Cool.
I'll give you a synopsis. So, Linda, you had said the tongue's wagging the dog or something, and the main mast needed to be wider, and the connecting mast needed to be smaller. And we did that. Took the railing out.
Here you go. Somebody.
Actually flipped it, so it was facing the opposite direction.
Hold on, where am I?
Changed the front door, changed the 6 lights to 4 lights, and made the actual footprint 307 feet smaller.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. I'm back to left and right and rear.
No, that's previous submission.
Okay, so I go away from here?
Yeah. In the former,
This isn't Huntington, right?
no. I basically did everything you asked for.
Yeah,
The Craftsman front door isn't working with this.
Okay, we
It's not
don't
a-
care.
It's not a Craftsman door building at all.
We'll do just a
Just
six
do a six
panel
panel
for
for
now,
now.
and we can come back. That's fine.
The dormer, what are your play heights, Bill?
They are, I believe,
Oh, those houses
8
are
foot
very- yeah,
6.
huge. The only reason I'm asking is because when you go to the south elevation, your dormer goes all the way, and the front, it goes all the way. Can you pull it off the ridge?
I don't think you're gonna see that.
Well, you see, certainly see the front one.
Sure.
I don't know how you're gonna get it off there. Can you get it off at least
I'll make the wall height a little less.
6 inches?
Yeah.
But don't mess up the window
No,
heights, because
that's
you're running
fine.
into the porch. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve with the 6-panel front door and the dormer on the west being pulled off the ridge?
So moved.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You gotta be careful about that, because you can't have a window pane, you can't make those shorter.
No, I know.
Horizontal.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, and that was all on the west elevation? West elevation. Alrighty. Rose. Actually, if you want to go to Nielsen, it should take 2 minutes.
No,
It
Nielsen
will.
was a
I
landscape.
don't even need that
We've
one right
approved
now.
everything around it.
I know.
It's just sitting in the
think she'd
middle of it.
prefer
We've already
having
seen it.
Rose.
I'd rather do Rose.
She, do what you want.
We're not in a
Get
hurry
Ben.
for the other one,
Ben,
so.
do you have the file?
They won't let me withdraw it. Nobody in that office will let me withdraw it.
Well, then you're going back with us to withdraw it, because we cannot have the two going at the same time.
All right,
Let me,
so,
just suggest something.
Yeah.
You do approval through staff with the withdrawal of that application.
You can, but you're going back with us to do it right now. Well, there's no guarantee that these staff approvals coming out of him are
okay,
getting
so
done.
we've looked at this a few times. The first time I went with a barn
You can withdraw
theme.
anything you want, anytime.
The second time I went to the hybrid with the hip roof. It was agreed upon it should be a simpler structure. So we went back to just a plain gable, pulled all the pieces in so there's a break in the building wall. And it's very simple, no barn doors.
All right, wait a minute, here comes that one.
21'9" in height.
I haven't seen it, hold on. How did you get it that low?
Because
We
the
wanted
second
it
floor
low.
walls are only 4 feet.
Well, it's all storage, right?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. I haven't even got it yet. Where am I going now?
What do you think,
That's the
Diane?
that's the previous.
So I
Keep
get rid of
going.
this.
It's on the last
Right
page.
there.
Where am I?
Right
Very
there, you
simple.
got it, you got it.
Very simple building.
What's facing William Street, that is?
Yep.
Is this what colors?
The colors are, hold on,
Oh, this is a
I
color,
think white trim.
sidewall, white trim, sash, white, funnels, gray, roof, gray, doors, natural.
Move to
Okay.
approve.
That's what
All
is
right,
there now.
these are these TLs,
Yes.
True Divided Lights?
Yes.
All right, who
Yeah,
made the motion
I
over there? Ray made the motion to approve, all those in favor?
Aye.
Now you want us to hold on to Nielsen?
Yeah, we can wait.
Somebody make a motion to put Nielsen over to September 1st?
So moved.
Okay. And somebody want to make a motion to approve Michael Ryan, subject to withdrawal of the first application,
So moved.
the original application?
The original application.
Giants made that motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
And Ben, you're going back with us now.
Motion to adjourn?
Val's made a motion to adjourn at 4:02. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Where's that first approval? We gotta sign Ben's first approval.
Oh, that's right.
Here you go. Ray, keep that one. I gotta put the condition on it. Oh, and one more thing, guys, before we adjourn, technically.